Happy Halloween.
Good morning.
Hey, how's everybody?
Oh, man.
I have to say that made me think of Wayne's World when they did like the. Anyway, all right.
Yeah, that's what happens when you riff on music. And this podcast could take a far turn to the musical.
I came in late on this one, and
Came in late because?
I was having my prostate checked.
And is it still?
It's still there. Yeah.
Okay.
It's still there. It exists. All right. Goodness.
I hear an echo right now. I don't know why. I was talking out for the reaming out of Dr. Ray. Hello. So we're less than a week away from the presidential election. And
man, we are.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I didn't think about where we were.
So this will be the last podcast prior to. I've made my own pleas for people to, first of all, vote, go vote, no matter what, always vote. We all have our choice of who we want to, we have the options of who we can vote for. And the goal for me and part of this with you guys is just education and being transparent and as truthful as possible. It's bothered me for my entire life whenever I would see a media post or any kind of a lie really resonates heavily with me to the point where it makes my skin crawl. And so part of this reasoning behind starting a podcast was COVID exposed a big, wide path of lies. And, the last 2 to 3 years of listening to the Joe Rogans and the Tucker Carlsons and the Brett Weinsteins and all these people who identify as left wing and in a lot of cases very liberal left wing, and watching transitions from very smart people to recognizing things for the very first time. And me and you have talked about it a lot, Dr. Roy, about COVID was terrible in so many ways. It could have been handled so much better, but effectively what it did, I think, was to cast a giant spotlight on an awakening, a potential for awakening. Like if you can see a lie in front of you that is obviously a lie or even a partial truth, it can be very damaging if you just ignore those things moving forward. And I really think this election is about a status quo conversation or an awakening conversation, a continued awakening. I feel like my personal feelings are, if Kamala Harris is inserted into the government, she's already there. She's been there for 4 years. We're basically going to get more, not just more of what we've had with Biden, but a continual spiral in the same direction. And my own personal opinion is that direction has been downward. We need a turn. We need a reset of some sort, in my opinion. And I came prepared to talk about health. We had a guest that was going to come on today, and she's not feeling well. Got a lot of clips. We're going to talk about some of the things we've talked about before. And I've been very critical of Trump. You know that. I've been very critical of Republicans. Whenever Elon and Brett and all these different former left-wing people basically were kicked out of their own party, and the Republican Party basically put an umbrella over the top of all of them. That provided some hope of, I don't want to say unity just for unity's sake, but I want to say a conversation that needs to be had, a continuing conversation, a non-censored conversation, right? So anyway, that was kind of I just made that up in the last 5 minutes, and you can probably tell because of rambling. But let's talk today about any ideas for people who are still on the fence about voting. I've made an open plea on Facebook that I would take anyone to a poll, to a voting center and help them vote if they can't get there. Dr. Roy or Travis, what are do you have anything you want to basically talk about or maybe have a final plea to someone that is undecided?
Yeah. Our economy is in shambles.
But the Dow's up.
Oh, yeah. the Dow's up, but those dollars that you see in there are not worth $1 anymore.
Oh, I know. My grocery bill is.
They're worth about 55 cents. And the energy and food are the two things that are driving most of the inflation. I went to a meeting several months ago who said, the guy was saying, there's nothing wrong with the economy right now if you take out energy and food. And we said, fuck, everybody thinks about that.
Isn't that like 70% of America? Would you say it's a direct influence?
You just take out the oxygen, and we're okay. It's okay.
Just don't breathe, dude, and everything is fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all utilize energy and food. I think is what you're after, and yeah.
And the fact that from day one when the Bidens went into the White House, he turned off the Keystone pipeline, and right before that, gasoline was running at about $1.50 a gallon, and it just went through the roof. And our area here in Indiana and Kentucky is less because we have fewer taxes on that, but still. We're paying way over $2 a gallon for that.
Oh yeah,
and you shouldn't have to do that. And diesel is expensive too, and diesel's what drives commerce.
So
everything is carried in semis.
Well, so I actually had this conversation recently with a friend of mine, and we were talking about how the Keystone Pipeline was shut down.
Yeah.
So then a lot of that had to be trained.
Yeah.
Transported via train. And a lot of other things were transported via train, but now that had to get shifted around, and so there's less, and the whole economics of supply and demand. So that Keystone Pipeline had much more effect than just fuel prices.
Sure.
It helped, and it makes sense to me. Now, I didn't do a deep dive into this, but this all makes sense to me. But due to that, you have less train cars available for whatever it might be, produce or goods of any kind, whatever the goods are. And because of that, you have less of a supply, a higher demand. Your costs are, the costs for us to buy them are going to be higher. So I think the shutting down of the Keystone Pipeline, which I know we're not even talking, Biden's not even running, but the shutting down of that, I think, affected the economy in a much larger scale than just fuel.
I would argue that Biden is running, but
you
just said the same apparatus that controlled Biden is.
There you go.
I don't think Biden's a puppet. Kamala is a puppet. And I think a lot of that is, and I think people say, well, Obama's pulling the strings from behind. Obama was not much of anything. He's having his strings pulled by somebody, whether it's George Soros or the
Blob, right?
Or the Iranian government.
I think it's the Blob.
Or what? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to push back on you just a little bit early here, Doc Roy.
Go right ahead.
But I would agree that Biden is a puppet to the Blob, but I would say he's much less of a puppet to the Blob than Kamala is. Biden
that's
has
because his brain's shot.
Well,
yeah,
I don't disagree with that. Well, we could talk about that. That would be a whole podcast. But there has been people that are kind of paying attention at a close level to the politics are saying basically Biden has been lashing out against Kamala Harris. He has not been fully supportive.
Oh yeah,
of the takeover of the killing of democracy by inserting a candidate.
Yeah, there's a picture of him wearing a MAGA hat.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's probably AI generated, but neither here nor there. To me, it's the subtle signs. And I was listening to a podcast this morning, and I recommend anyone that's interested in hearing. There's a gentleman named Sam Harris who is I would consider him to be a leftist, and he and Ben Shapiro were having a debate this morning. I mean, I think it dropped yesterday, but Sam Harris basically is he keeps coming back. I mean, I think he fully has Trump derangement syndrome. Sam has been friends with Brett Weinstein and Eric Weinstein and all these different people, and all the people that I kind of look to, who former Democrats look to him and say he's mentally corrupted by Trump derangement syndrome. He can't see anything other than that. So Sam's argument to Ben, and I feel like Ben just owned him on it, was basically to the effect of Trump is Hitler, and Kamala is not. So he is a singular threat to the democracy. And I think what most people who really take a 40,000-foot view of things can, if you can just step back from it and say, Trump has been in policy and politics for 4 years out of the last 20. He, during his window of in his reign, he said a bunch of stupid shit, which I would agree he did, but his policies had the country moving in the right direction. Whereas the Blob, the apparatus that controls the narrative all around us, controls the media, controls the lies, doesn't tell us the truth about COVID, doesn't tell us the truth about war and why we need more of it, tells us that Trump is going to start wars, tells us that Trump's going to do all these things. And if you really step back and look at it, the very things that they are saying Trump might do are the exact things that the current Blob is doing.
Well,
it's a shell game.
Yeah, that's exactly what the communists do. Is they do what they accuse their opponents of doing, and they say he's going to tear everything down. In the meantime, they're trying to tear everything down. Well, obviously Trump is not Hitler if he can get Jewish people to come to his Madison Square Garden meetings and that sort of thing. And if the Amish are voting for Trump, obviously the Amish have some sense.
Are you trying to get our Amish people back on the podcast?
Yeah, they stopped listening.
You ran them off a couple podcasts ago.
How did I do that?
I don't know, but it seemed like I felt like you did.
You said they were all on the spectrum.
No, let me tell you.
I mean,
people say since the Amish don't take immunizations and they don't have anybody that's on the spectrum. You go to an Amish camp and there are some people that are on the spectrum. Let me tell you.
Oh, there they go. They're gone now.
As someone who
they're here and they're now gone again within 45 seconds.
As
just like that.
Like that.
As someone who is on the spectrum, I can spot them a mile away. Let me tell you.
Right. You got spectrum door?
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
So
that took a wild turn. Sorry. Yeah.
I never knew I was on the spectrum until I got older, and then I said, "Oh hell, I do that all the time." So,
Travis, you have anything you want to riff on? I kind of opened the door to your last plea and what you're thinking going into this election. Anything that I know you've got some division in your own family, not division in a sense that a lot of hate going back and forth, but just political views and wrong direction and that stuff.
Sure. Well, I mean, first off, to kind of hit what Doc did a little bit, I mean, Trump's already been in office for 4 years, and he had to combat everybody tooth and nail to try to make anything happen. And yet, like you said, we were better off, I feel, as a country then than we are now.
Definitely,
most definitely.
Oh yeah.
In a lot of different ways. I mean, I think as a I hate to say world power. I mean, we're not trying to oppress everybody in the world, but I mean, the Ukraine thing, I don't think would have happened. The Israel or Palestine, that whole thing, I don't think would be happening. And I just think we've seen.
Trump walked into North Korea. He's the only president that has ever met with
walked over the border, walked over the line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
a lot of people tried to bend that, or bend when he's with Putin or whatever, that he's trying to, I don't know, team up with them or something. And I think he's just trying to keep the world from blowing itself up.
They say he's a puppet to world leaders, and they say that it's dangerous for him to have conversations with world leaders who do have nuclear power, the power to push a button and have annihilation of at least a portion of the planet. Our government tries to tell the people, the masses, that is bad. Like, the people who we fight need to be afraid of us. They need to know that we're serious. They need to know that we're not going to put up with their shit. That doesn't mean that we're going to go insert ourselves in a war on a border and fight you like that. We can fight you in different ways. And there's several different ways we could go here, and I don't want to get too far off. But like in one of Trump's interview, I think it might have been with Rogan, and I didn't get the proper clip the last time. But he's talking about a potential of, he's talking about tax cuts for all people, like a maximum tax of 15%. But he floated an idea, and I feel like if he wins, me and the three of us here will have to continue pushing this narrative. He talked about replacing income tax, federal income tax, with tariffs. Like, no more federal income tax and tariffs. So you think about your paycheck, and most people don't think about the fact that they have to work 4 months out of the year just to pay the government. Like, if you really had to, if you had all the money given to you and you had to put aside 40% of your money and hand it to someone in the government, how would that feel? People that own businesses do that. You have to write checks, you have to save money, and you have to cut it. You have to cut a check. It's very painful, and it makes you really identify what you're paying for, as opposed to a little money that leaves your check that you never really think about, because you're building your budget off of, here's the number that we have to work with. You're not really saying, well, what could I do with this other stuff? Like, you and me spent extra money on school, where we already have tax money taken out for school. We don't get to use that. So, I mean, anyway, I kind of went into a different rabbit hole. But
you did a little bit, but so we do use a little bit of that, and that's actually on the Indiana ballot. And that's kind of another thing I would talk about would be Amendment 2, about trying to get it to where we can't use public funds. Like, we can't use our tax, we can't take the money with our child. And we had to talk about that a couple podcasts ago, and it's actually on the ballot to try to nix that, so that you can't get vouchers, state vouchers or whatever, for public schools. Or, I mean, for private schools, for private schools.
That's just the teachers' unions trying to...
Sure.
Well, so it's there in a lot, and I've been seeing, that's probably one of the bigger ads I've seen. I keep seeing, say no to Amendment 2 or or whatever, or say yes, or whatever it is. I can't recall, because I know which way I'm going to go with that. But I mean, that, so we were talking about education, and that was on the forefront of my mind.
We're talking about taxes, we're talking about tariffs.
Oh, yeah, my pushback on that was, with the tariffs, though, yeah, maybe if our income tax, or if we don't have the income tax any longer, but products are going to start costing more because of the tariffs.
They will cost more, but you'll have 40% more money.
I personally don't think I pay that much tax. I think income tax, I think I pay like 30 maybe.
And you'll also, I don't know how much you know about NAFTA, but
a lot, because that shut down a big factory in my hometown.
So what NAFTA, when they sold it, what they tried to sell us the idea of, well, we can help prop up China's massive population, let them build things, and we can get cheaper products. That has made us more and more reliant on everything from mostly China, like including our power, that we're building our power grid, and China. All those products have to come through China. I
think you've got that mixed up, because NAFTA is North American free trade, so it's just for North America. It's Mexico, U.S., and Canada. It's a trade. It's so that there were no tariffs and things going across borders from Canada, U.S., and Mexico. That's all that NAFTA is. It's a North American free trade.
Based on I understand what you're saying, but based on my understanding of what that means, at that same point, and this is Bill Clinton work here,
right?
That's when we really became dependent on most things to China. Like, we started offshoring our jobs. Like, we are. I
mean, yes, but NAFTA. Okay, I see where you're going with that. But NAFTA itself was just inter-country goods transfer in North America.
Well, at that same time, maybe I put the wrong.
And like I said, I did a lot of research on NAFTA, because it shut down GE and Tel City. All that went to Mexico, and everybody, my grandparents had to take early retirement. My mother had to go find a new job. Like, it was a very it took down the population of the city by probably 500 to 700 people. I mean, that was a big deal. So yeah, I've actually read a lot.
Well, I mean, I think there's several different holes we could fall down in here. To me, the tariff versus, I think your biggest hitch was food, prices are going to go up. Well, maybe in some areas, certain things would go up. And Joe Rogan's talked about this with like iPhones, for instance. iPhones are, however much they are now. But we are, the part that we never grasp with and we don't talk about is those products. That phone is basically put on the shelves by slaves. Like it's slave labor.
Yeah.
And so is it going to cost more if we do it here and or if we don't pay slaves to do it? Yeah, but we're not paying slaves to do it. We're not enslaving humanity to give us a cheaper product. Things are going to have to cost a little more. Like instead of the government saying we need to tax a billionaire or tax corporations more, in some instances I can see both sides of that argument, but they take the taxes and they spend it on things that don't actually benefit us. So they're not turning it around and making our food cheaper. They're not taking those taxes and making our cost of living cheaper. They've done the exact opposite. They've spent more money in the last 4 years than they ever have, and everything's more expensive than it ever has. So we're flipped upside down because we're not building. We have no ability to control prices. We have no ability to control something that we need from, like when you said when COVID hit and the ships stopped shipping chips. I mean, we stopped building cars because we ran out of chips. That's same way with medicines. Most medicines, if it's coming from China and they shut down the ships, we don't get the medicines. So, I mean, it's a whereas, and this is the point. Trump used tariffs to say it's not fair, your policies. We're not, and he used Germany, I think was one of the instances. Like Germany, they don't sell American cars. We've got how many different German cars over here? I can name 4 or 5.
A lot of them we're building here.
Yeah,
BMW is built in South Carolina.
Well, but the moral of the story is they're building here because the incentives were they build those and create those jobs here versus building them in Germany and shipping them cheaply without any kind of a tariff, so they can remain competitive with companies like Toyota, who do. I mean, they send money back to Japan, but they put a lot of people to work, and that brings up our middle class, and it gives us some stability and strength. Anyway, I don't know kind of where I was going with the original point. Now we've gone in a couple different directions.
Yeah, well, I was just talking about the tariffs creating more cost, and you had brought up some of what you brought up was doing the work over here versus slave labor over there. But I don't know that the raising of tariffs. I mean, it may do that, but then you're going to lose some of the tariff money that is supposed to replace the income tax, and so that could cause a whirlwind as well. So if you start doing these jobs in the U.S., but you're planning on getting
if you
money
invest in infrastructure to build and do the things here versus offshoring them,
Elon is going to fire 85% of the federal employees. So that's
a new number.
Yeah,
I thought 75 is what I heard, and that was
and I heard like 70. So, but anyway, there's going to be a good amount.
And spin back around. Department of Education will be one of those. That's
I'm sure.
Keep going.
So there are going to be plenty of people who need jobs, and you can put them to work doing some of these things.
Yeah, but right now,
unfortunately, they're not working at all. They're just sitting behind a desk drawing a paycheck.
I didn't think about this, but you saying that there might be a massive shift in like employment. I mean, the unemployed pool is going to be drastically increased like the moment that happens.
Well, not necessarily, because everybody says, well, if you send out all the illegals, who's going to put our roofs on? Well, there are people who can learn how to hammer shingles in and take care of that in the United States.
Okay.
Well, back to your argument of there will be a layoff. Vivek has talked about this. Ramaswamy has talked about this in pretty significant amount of time. He's put a lot of time into it, I should say. He's talking about severance pay, like fairly significant severance pay, meaning a year salary or whatever while you find a job. Here's the thing: if you work for a bloated democracy, if you work for a bloated, say Twitter, let's use a real world scenario. Elon buys Twitter. Mm-hmm. He cuts 70% of the people, basically right out.
Yeah.
We talked about it last week or the week before last. Comes back better and stronger. Did all those people that worked for Twitter, who were a lot of very, very smart people, are they still jobless?
No.
Probably not. Like, if you are really good and you can apply yourself and do things, you're going to land. You're going to land somewhere. And our jobs are getting ready to shift. This was a kind of a two-part thing. Our job situation is getting ready to shift anyway. AI is going to be a major disruptor in what kind of jobs are coming into the future. This is a conversation you and I have kind of played with a little bit, but we've not really dug into it too deeply. So I think, to me, this is an efficiency cleanup, and then we're going to get back into line if you want to reapply for some of these positions, right? And if you're qualified, if you come in and you can earn a spot in a new organization that's cleaner without all the bloated regulation and all that stuff, that's my point.
Well, if anyone has ever worked with federal employees, many of them are very, very intelligent and very, very dedicated, but there are a lot of people who work for the government who are lazy as hell. And they come in and they sit behind the desk and don't do anything and get a big paycheck. The VA is one of the things that I'm talking about.
You've got a lot of
I saw
experience
that firsthand with my grandfather.
Yeah, well, I trained in a VA hospital, and the nurses would ignore us when we gave them an order. Said, "No, we don't have to do that." And I said, "Okay, damn it, I'll go do it myself." But you can't fire somebody like that in the way civil service is set up. If they don't do anything that is illegal, then you really can't fire them. And they changed.
But you can.
Well, you can. They changed the rules in the VA when Trump was there to fire these people. They were giving them bonus checks for doing nothing. Some of these people who were like senior in the VA, they would get like a $25,000 bonus for doing nothing.
The workaround plan for that, right? Did we talk about it on the podcast?
I don't know.
So you said you can't get rid of them. Vivek talks about this very, very in a detailed way, and it is you have to do blanket layoffs.
Sure.
You have to fire people not by whatever, but like your last name, your date of birth, your whatever. There has to be some code that's not identified to the person. With that, you are going to rinse off a lot of really good people, and you are going to keep some bad people.
Yeah.
Right? But you're going to then shift a lot of, like, work still has to get done. So then, you have to hire the right amount of people back, and then have a process of actually weeding out. Like, we have to get back into the point where, Indiana's an at-will state. If you hire me to do something, or if I, whatever, you can fire me.
Sure.
Because you said, well, you're not doing a good job. Right? And that's what our government has to be that way. That's why getting rid of the Department of Education is a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's not that way in the civil service. If you've I've tried to fire civil service employees because they were just inept and couldn't do that, and they said, no, you gotta keep them, and you need to retrain them. I mean, but how do you retrain a physician who doesn't want to do anything? They come to work and do 4 hours of work, and then
I can tell you
play golf.
The easy workaround, because I am married to an attorney, and I almost slept at a Holiday Inn last night.
Mm-hmm.
If you do multiple rounds of layoffs,
yeah, and
then you only hire back people that are effective.
Oh, sure, you can do that.
You can absolutely drain the swamp relatively fast. I mean, you really can. And me and Travis are, I want you to riff on this if you can, Travis, but me and you are very critical of the education system. We both send our kids to private school. The argument I always hear is getting rid of the Department of Education would destroy teachers. And I know a lot of teachers. I've good friends with a lot of teachers. I myself went to school. I could have been a teacher. I love teachers. Teachers mostly are never, ever, ever, ever the problem. There are, just like any other industry, there are bad eggs. For the most part, they're fantastic. The system around them has put them in a position to fail.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And there is no way to slowly fix that. You have to eradicate it. And if there is a need for something, go back to the core, the most simple purpose of what was the Department of Education for, and then rebuild from there. Same thing with the FBI and CIA or whatever other organizations you want to talk about.
Absolutely. My whole idea about the CIA and the FBI is you fire everybody above GS9, and then you start hiring back the ones that are going to do the work. And if they cannot prove that they are completely loyal to the administration, then they don't get hired back. But in the they had to actually pass a law that said that they could fire people in the Veterans Administration for poor problems, for all the stuff they're doing. But they had people who were in charge of an entire area that was not that were not doing anything. They were sitting in their office drawing a paycheck and getting a bonus, and there were still veterans out there that couldn't get in to see a cardiologist. And that's wrong. It's definitely wrong.
Travis, I don't think you were given really any kind of a ability to respond, and I know you're doing some camera work now, but
you're fine. In which avenue, like in which thing?
Well, we've talked about education.
So I mean, I think you're right with the teachers.
And we're making a plea to anybody that's an undecided
Sure.
voter. Where are we going with this?
Sure. Yeah, and I don't know. Well, with I guess fixing or cleaning up the Department of Education, but when you were talking about teachers, most teachers I hear that either leave or unhappy it's due to the administration. It's almost always, like you said, due to the administration, due to what's around them, what they're allowed to do or allowed to not do. Man, I remember when I was in school, and you may even remember further back, but I went to a Catholic grade school, and I mean, you get a ruler across the knuckles or something. Like they could actually, I hate to say corporal punishment, I mean, they could actually do things to get the kids to be in line. And I'm not necessarily saying that we need to be physical with them, but I mean, there needs to be a point where, for instance, I will redact any names so that there's no issues here. But one of the big reasons why my daughter is now in private school versus public school is she had a child in her class who would throw chairs and flip desks. The teacher could not intervene. All the teacher could do would get every other kid out of that classroom, allow the kid throwing the tantrum to continue to throw the tantrum until more people came as backup or whatever for the teacher. And then they went in and I don't know what they did beyond that, like how they solved the problem necessarily. But, if that happened when I was in grade school or junior high or whatever, teacher would have grabbed that kid and taken them. I was getting ready to say throw them, but taken them out into the hallway. They would have removed the issue.
You'd have been paddled within 5 minutes if it would have been in my school.
Well, they would have removed the issue from the room, not removed everybody else from the room,
right,
and extend this issue. So now you've got an hour of time that the kids are currently not learning. They're just having to deal with being out in the hallway or whatever it is, so that this one kid can be handled with kid gloves. And that's, I think, and that's just one specific example, but I mean, there are just things that have changed that I think the education system is failing due to that. And a lot of people that talk about the vouchers say that if you take the money away from the public schools, put it into the private schools, even if it is following your child, it's going to cause the public school to fail because they're going to lose more and more money.
Well, if you are failing,
so
you should fail.
I mean, a lot of them say, well, why don't we just fix the public schools? Well, that would be great if we could fix the public schools.
That's the argument. You just got to the root thing. Either you try to fix it or you rebuild it, right? And that's you could talk about cars, you could talk about restringing a guitar, you can talk about that. At some point you have to make a decision financially and from a quality perspective is, are we trending up or are we trending down with how we are trying to throw more money at these issues?
We throw more and more money into the public schools, and they still can't do very well on the standard tests.
Oh, the numbers coming out are insane.
Well, and what I don't like about that, you just brought up the standard test. That's kind of another thing that hits me, is another reason why I want my child to be pushed. In the public school system, they're just trying to bring up, which I think the No Child Left Behind thing is great. Don't get me wrong. But their whole focus is to bring the lower up high enough to do better on those tests to get more money versus the ones that are already at a higher level than their peers are not getting, they're actually kind of coming back down to middle because they're not being pushed or helped in any way.
Well, you can look at the saying, the rising tide raises all boats. Well, that's not the case if your boat is anchored to the bottom.
Yeah.
And when the tide comes up, you basically get drowned. And that's the way when I think about a super intelligent person or kid like yours, and they're basically held to something lower, they're stifled. I dealt with this with our oldest kid who hated school, was bored by it, tested off the charts, and just basically became disinterested. I mean, it happened all in the middle of COVID. There's a lot of things going on around it, but it's not designed to create the best of the best. It's designed it's the oldest DEI playbook. I mean, it's outlining DEI before DEI was even a three-letter word that we use.
Yeah.
It started with all students deserve the same outcome, or
like the No Child Left Behind thing.
Yeah. It's just a terrible policy, and it should have been killed quickly, and it wasn't. And so now it's the people that not only created those policies but came into being through those education systems are now, it's fully ingrained in their head that this is the only way we can go. I mean, this is the new system. Well, it needs to be it's a reset. I mean, there's no fixing it.
Great Britain has a good way with determining the way the children should be educated. At about 10 or 11, they're all given tests, and the ones who do well on the tests proceed with higher education, and the ones that don't do well on those tests, they get sent to trade school, and they're the ones that are electricians and plumbers and roofers and all of those folks.
I don't disagree with that, but you would get so much pushback from so many parents and kids both if we try to implement that.
Well, obviously, if you remember the scandal where they were paying loads of money to get their kid accepted to a real good school.
Oh yeah, chick from Full House.
Yeah,
I remember. I can't think of her name, but yeah.
And a lot of people went to prison, and the guy who was really pushing that went to prison, and but basically these kids would get taken to like USC, and they would be put into like the rowing crew and
take cycling class.
But they would come out with a diploma from USC or UCLA, or I can't say much about UCLA because they're all DEI now.
I was more referring to, though, that everybody tries, and I'm actually a firm believer that college is not for everybody, and trades are great. I really like Mike Rowe. I don't know if you know from Dirty Jobs. He's such a proponent of that idea that trade schools are the way to go. I totally get that, but if a kid's entire life is changed from at the age of 11 or 12, and they're not going to be able to go to higher education, they're going to have to go to a trade school or something, and you shut down that road for them, I'm just saying you're going to get a lot of pushback. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. That may work really, really well. It sounds like it works well for them, but I think just the way the American society is right now, parents would be just in such an upheaval because, you're saying that my kid's not smart enough to go to I think that, well, anyway, regardless, I don't know that we're ever going to get there. But
in Great Britain, you can get around that.
You can retest or something at a later time?
Well, no, you can, if you've got money, you can go to college.
Well, okay. Yeah.
Well, and this is a very nuanced conversation, but I personally believe AI will be changing and a lot of this and filling a lot of these gaps. You got personal education assistance for each kid, basically. And I know this is a nuanced conversation and a slippery slope, but I feel like anyone that is not proficient in a certain area can and should be able to get caught up much faster than they are. Sometimes, you know, and I think we've got a lot of great teachers. My kid right now is getting a tutor in math, and it's from one of the teachers at school, and he's doing an awesome job with him. But I feel like we're going to be to a point here where there will be some kind of a test that our son can take, and it'll fine tune the concepts. You know, as we all know, math, concepts are built on top of concepts, right? And if you don't understand kind of the core piece, you're very distracty.
Sorry,
he's over. You're trying to take off on me or something. You're flapping your arm.
I'm working with the cameras. Keep going.
So no, I just feel like, you know, these things will help kids, you know, not be left behind in a much more efficient manner. But we also need to take the roof off of our kids, because we need intelligent kids, you know, using the full function of their brain. Mm-hmm. And the Department of Education ain't it.
I don't think private schools aren't set up for that at all.
No,
excuse me, public. Man, I keep getting public and private back and forth.
And to some extent, private schools aren't either. To some extent,
they do a better job.
Much better. Yeah. This isn't me saying. I'm just trying to say they're not perfect.
No,
right?
And nobody's going to be perfect.
Anyway, so I don't. You know, I feel like I got a lot of clips that I want to get to here. But
yeah, we've been beating the education horse for a while.
Basically, we got two choices. Anyone that's, you know, independents are gonna decide this election, and independents mostly go with their pocketbook, their feeling of safety and security, and a vision for the future. Right now,
that all sounds like Trump.
The only thing that I'm hearing from the left is fear campaign. The Sam Harris, Ben Shapiro. If you want to hear a left versus right, it's Sam Harris speaking for 2 hours about why I would vote for anything other than Trump versus saying anything positive about Kamala. And then you've got a reset campaign on the other side where, thankfully, some of these people that have joined the party, the team, the new people like Elon and Kennedy have stolen some of the oxygen out of the room where Trump can't come in and say stupid stuff. With that said, he has come in and he's interviewed so many different things, and I liked a lot of them, but he just still bloviates way too much on certain things. The weave, as he calls it, the weave.
Yeah.
But I want to get into a couple of clips here, because there's two different things that I got one from a Chris Cuomo that historically I've not agreed with too much. He was at CNN whenever when they basically went all in on the Russia collusion hoax and went all in on we must vaccinate, and anyone that doesn't vaccinate is basically a Trump idiot, Hitler, I don't know. You know, they put all the names on it. But this little 57 second.
Make sure your volume's up.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Thank you. Let's give it a hear, and I'll let you guys respond.
You got to stop thinking that the people who support Trump are like Trump, that they speak like Trump, that they act like Trump. They don't. They want to hire Trump to do a dirty job. They want him to be a virus to the political corpus. They want him to disrupt, to destroy, to demean those that they disrespect and dislike, the system that they distrust and despise. They want someone to do what they believe has been done to them and that they cannot do themselves. That's why they don't care that he exhibits terrible behavior, because they're putting him into a terrible place. If you're sending somebody into the jungle, do you really care if they're a savage? You see what I'm saying? And you have to understand it that way. You may not agree, you may not accept, you may not like, but that's what it is.
Wow.
Sure.
Travis, I'm going to let you go first on this one, because I didn't do the lead in on purpose, but he did make the dirty job reference in the mic. You just talked about Mike Rose. So.
Yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts on.
But we didn't plan that.
I know. What your thought on Cuomo is, but generally what he said, but just riff wherever you want to go with that one.
For me, no, I mean, I agree entirely with that. And the unfortunate thing is he was in so much political battle during his 4 years that he was in office that he really wasn't able to entirely do what he wanted to do, what he promised to do. But I don't fault him for not being able to fulfill what he promised to do as far as the draining of the swamp and that kind of thing, because he was fought so hard, tooth and nail, to try to fix
by his own people.
Well, by the people that were installed to him. Like, he didn't hire them. That's why he kept firing people over and over, and everybody thought that was a big deal. Like, oh, everybody's leaving because he's an awful... No, he was trying to get people around him that would actually help him do what he needed to do, which is clean the mess. So, I mean, I absolutely agree with what he said. I have not seen that clip. I really liked that clip. Somewhat. I think some people are going to pull the idea that when he used the term destroy, that made me cringe a little bit, only because I think that paints not necessarily the right picture entirely. I feel like that's too aggressive. Things
Destroy
like
what?
that.
What do you mean?
Well, because one of the terms he talked about destroying, to clean up, the dirty job, but he talked about the distrust, but then he talked about destroying, part of the political system that has failed us, or however he posed that, and I agree with that. But then you're going to get a lot of people that might be on the fence that feel like, oh, destroy, oh, that's a little too aggressive.
So
That's
you're saying the rhetoric is too strong.
I think it is a little like not to me, but if we're trying to get the people that are on the line, that are on the fence, I think it might be a little strong. Okay. But I agree with it.
Well, okay, so just to give you a little pushback here, this is where I feel civics and world history, especially American history, has 1,000% failed. Mm-hmm. Our education system, our ability to think critically about what's going on in the world. But if anyone has not read the Constitution and the paper, the Federalist Papers, and understand how our early government basically knew that we were going to have to continue fighting, in some instances like savages, like blood on the streets sometimes might be necessary. The blood of tyrants especially needs to happen. Now, you could look back in history and say, "Wow, they were just being rhetorical." They were just saying something. They were being very literal. Like the thing about the Constitution,
it's a very little document.
It's a very little document. They don't add a lot of fluff in it, and they don't really keep it. People say the Second Amendment is open to interpretation. It's not. It's very simple, and it's very simple for a reason. Same thing with free speech. Doesn't say free speech unless it hurts your feelings. Doesn't say free speech, whatever. If you're physically threatening someone or you're putting someone's life in danger of death by saying something, that's the only exception to me. Mm-hmm. I'm a strict literalist on that one. But just the pushback, because I think you're right. You're 100% right. People think Trump's words are going to incite some kind of massive violent occurrence. People paint that to, well, yeah, look at January 6th. To me, we are being led into those traps. Like, you can't say bad. You can't say that. That's too, be nice, be nice. Meanwhile, they're passively aggressively doing everything in a much more like toned down manner. Like they're poking and prodding you every day. Mm-hmm. And they call you names because you don't agree with a man is a man is a man and the woman is a woman. You're an evil person because you don't agree with how this person feels. That when you go off the rails to that level, then you got to be careful with those words, Travis. Be really, really careful. I mean, no, we have to understand. We have to toughen up our kids. The soft.
That's true.
Keeping everything soft ends really poorly.
What's the line?
Strong men,
that
create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create hard times.
Yeah, that whole cyclical thing.
It's the thing, and it's throughout history. It's the exact same thing that we are greatly ignoring.
So do they not teach? Do they not go over the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all that stuff?
Go over it?
Civics anymore?
No.
Well, like read it. I mean, like talk about it. I don't mean like I didn't.
It needs to be read. It needs to be
discussed. I guess when I said go over it, I meant discussions.
It needs to be talked about every single year for as early on as a kid can understand the why. We need to start talking about it.
Well, I agree, but do they not do that anymore?
No.
In like civics or history?
Even our private schools, I think they're definitely better. Like my kid is passionate about the Constitution. My 19-year-old is passionate about the Constitution. He believes in it very strongly. Mm-hmm. Some of that might have to do with this. Some of it might have to do with his wife with this? His mother. His mother is an attorney, so she right. protects people's constitutional rights for a living. Mm-hmm. Good, bad, or indifferent. Like whether you think she's helping the right person or the wrong person, the person has a constitutional right to be protected. So anyway, we need harsh conversations sometimes, and we need to protect our kids from being upset by harsh conversations. We don't need to protect them from the harsh conversations. We need to prepare them for this is coming. It can either come now and you can learn how to deal with it, or it's going to come when you least expect it and you're not going to be ready for it, nor are you going to be able to respond to it.
Mm-hmm. Doc?
That was a big rant. Sorry.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Him and I just went, not really toe-to-toe, but
No, I mean-
what you got, Doc?
Yeah, I got nothing other than that. I think that civics ought to be taught in the high schools.
Mm-hmm. I had
junior
civics.
high
When did it go
schools.
away?
I don't know.
When did woodworking and shop and all that stuff go away?
That was the best.
Probably mid-2000s, maybe?
That
because
was-
I still had shop and woodworking and stuff.
Well, you're
when
in
I
a
was-
smaller community. I think it went away probably a little sooner here. But
Yeah.
that's a
fair
nuance.
enough.
That's
Okay.
a nuance.
I didn't think about that, but that's probably true.
Yeah, that was the best thing that I ever had was 2 years of shop in junior high school. And obviously, I know how to put screws in. And I know how to change a lot of things around here. And my partner just is amazed that I'm able to do some of these things.
Well, we could go in a huge rabbit hole, but think about woodworking.
Oh yeah,
You think about if society comes to a point where we have an EMP or some kind of a removal of the privileges of all the easy things that make life easy for us.
Like going to Lowe's and buying some 2x4s?
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
learning how to work wood.
Yeah.
Probably pretty good just to have a basic understanding of.
Sure.
yeah.
Not so much anymore. Anyway, so I'm gonna just get right into another clip here because I got a lot of good ones, and this is another former. I would call her a former Democrat. She worked on RFK's campaign. Her last name is Kennedy, but she married into the Kennedy family. But she's got some really interesting points. This is from Tucker Carlson podcast.
It's just you either have it or you don't. I think it's Salman Rushdie who says the minute somebody says, I believe in free speech, except, stop them right there because they don't need to finish the sentence.
Boom.
But I just refer back to my first question, which is, since I'm so familiar with, all the schools you went to, the credentials you have, the world that you're from, I mean, you've got to be in the 0.1% of people who've taken this position. You took such an unpopular position. And I know, you're married into the family and all that, but still you became Bobby Kennedy's campaign manager. And now Bobby Kennedy's endorsed Trump. Yeah. And I just don't think you could hoist a bigger middle finger in the face of the world that you're from. I mean, I just know that because I know that world. So, did you even hesitate before doing that? What was your thinking? And, I'm sure none of your classmates did anything like that. Why did you do that?
I'm going to turn this right back on. You don't have to switch it over.
Okay.
I'm playing this because I want context for people who are on the fence, who are thinking, I can't vote for Trump because. I mean, that's the context of what this conversation is.
I think that if you gave them the choice, if they came down from Mars and you put the exact what is happening right now in front of them without the names of the parties or the names of the participants and said, you have 1 4-year stint where no new wars are started, where, bread costs half of what it costs now, gas a third, et cetera, et cetera. Rises in standard of living across the country, lower suicide rates, lower depression, lower homelessness, lower incarceration, lower immigration that is, illegal and results in children being lost around the country. And then you compare it with 4 years of another government that is endorsed, by the way, by Dick Cheney now, and a host of neocons that involves 2 new wars, printing $8 trillion of additional debt that is a tax on the poor and on future generations in order to pay for more war, more children going into poverty, more, that we have a real unemployment rate of 25% in this country, a quarter, when you take into account people who want a full-time job and don't have one, or people who have a full-time job but don't make $25,000 a year, which is not a living wage. If you take that into account, we have 24.9% true unemployment rate. So I think that you asked about people in my world. I think if you put any of that to them, and then on top of that said, and this leader that has plunged people into poverty and unemployment and, had two additional wars started on his watch, is censoring speech on social media, weaponizing the courts to take people of his own party and every single other party off of the ballot. I mean, literally Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson, Robert Kennedy Jr., obviously President Trump, No Labels, Jill Stein, everybody. There's nobody that, as far as I know, that didn't face some kind of a lawsuit to try to challenge their actual ballot access, the ability for an American to turn up and exercise their own sacred individual sovereignty of thought and choose whether or not to vote for them.
Okay, Travis.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'll let you guys
everywhere.
Yeah, she's a former CIA officer as well, just to add some credential.
I mean, I can't sum it up any better.
That's not a positive necessarily.
Well, it does. It gives her an insider understanding of what's going on. I think she also writes a lot now. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of, obviously, RFK has been digging hard against the CIA.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem kind of interesting that someone that's, I feel like you said it's not a positive. It's a positive if you want to understand how the apparatus works.
Yeah.
And then know how things operate, and then come to a RFK who wants to basically audit it and potentially remake it, right? Mm-hmm. That's my point. Did you have something else to say on it?
No.
The only thing I have to say on it is I couldn't sum it up any better. No. I mean, that was pretty great, honestly. Yeah.
Well, I highly recommend that entire podcast.
Maybe we need to just snip that out and send it to all the TV stations.
Yeah.
Hey, can you just play this between it?
Yeah, TV stations, right? Yeah. It doesn't endorse Kamala. They're not going to put anything on it. So that was dropped 4 days ago. I highly recommend that. Tucker with, I can't pronounce her name, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy. Pretty awesome. I got several more clips. Dr. Roy saying no was not really the thing that I was expecting in that moment.
Yeah.
I got several.
I mean,
more.
I don't have anything else either. I mean, all I can say is
ever since.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to add it when it's something is summed up. So
that was mic drop. That was like, all right, I'm done. Let's go.
Podcast over. Exactly. It's too early for lunch. What are we going to do now?
I mean, that's why I have nothing to really say other than just saying that was spot on.
Yeah. All right. So trailing right into another clip here. This one, I'm giving a lot of Tucker props today, but this one is with Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is a very, very well-known liberal guy. He, to me, sometimes he goes off into areas that I don't agree with. But again, with all this transition from people who've been identified as Democrat and even liberals have shifted into kind of the new populist window because their party has left them basically homeless. But Jimmy Dore has a bunch of good points. I highly recommend this one as well. This might even be newer than the last one, but I'm going to go ahead and crack this out.
And so they all are working. He wasn't a departure from George W. Bush, Barack Obama, just his skin color. He took us from 2 wars to 7. He gave us a right-wing healthcare plan, which came out of the Heritage Foundation, which is the same people I gave you Project 2025. And, he gave us Mitt Romney's healthcare plan. So, and he deported all those. He dropped more bombs than George Bush, and nobody noticed. And that's why they wanted to have Kamala Harris. That was their first choice. The donor class was Kamala Harris. They thought we'd have a female Barack Obama, and that's a good face for imperialism, right? Because we have a black woman bombing and stealing resources and doing neoliberal and neocon policies. That's perfect. And that you couldn't get a vote. So then they had to go to their second most reliable person, which was Joe Biden. That's exactly how it worked. I don't know if you remember, but they coronated her on Martha's Vineyard. She's going to be our candidate. And they thought they had the black Barack Obama, but she couldn't
couldn't get a vote. She has no political talent, right? And so then they forced her on Joe Biden as the vice president. And then, of course, they did a coup, just like Jim Gaffigan said at the L. Smith dinner. They had the debates way earlier than they normally would, so they would give them enough time to install Kamala Harris, and that's exactly what happened. So I don't know how I got off on this tangent, but yes, we know that after Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party, then the major newspapers, the mentions of racism and white supremacy, people have studied this. I'm not making this up. I'm just quoting studies, and went through the roof. And why is that? That's because, as Chomsky taught us, the newspapers aren't there to inform you. They're to manufacture consent. And one of the great ways to manufacture consent for the establishment is to divide and conquer. It's been there ever since World War II. It's been divide and conquer. And that's exactly what they did. So they got everybody that's what identity politics is. And it's got everybody till you identify with your skin color. It's the opposite of Martin Luther King. It's the opposite of judge someone by the content of their character.
Exactly.
And so now everybody's identified with their gender or their sexual preference or their skin color or their ethnicity, and they got us all siloed off and split up. But what we need to do is what Christian Smalls did on Staten Island when he started the first labor union for Amazon, right? So here's a black guy on Staten Island, and what is he doing? He's organizing a bunch of Trump voters to go against Jeff Bezos and the machine, and he won. Right? And he didn't do that by saying, hey, who here's a gun nut? All right, you are out. Who here supports the trans? You don't? You're out. Okay, who here? No, that's not how you organize, right? Who's left? Okay, now I'm going to organize with the rest of you. That's not how it works. You go, we have an economic interest. We share a common economic interest, and we share a common enemy, and that enemy is Jeff Bezos and the establishment. Who's with me? And they were with them. And, if the funny thing is, when you win a union like that, or you win economic gains for everybody, the people who disproportionately are benefited are the people of color. If you give black people have more medical debt per capita than white people, if you give everybody health care, that's going to help them more, right? So you give everybody health care, it helps the trans community. You give everybody a living wage, a strong union, that helps everybody more. And the people who are more disproportionately helped are the people who you normally consider the most vulnerable in your society. So that's the irony. But they want us fighting over things that just help your you fight over trans rights, fight over reparations, fight over this, instead of fight over something that helps everybody. And that's what divide and conquer is, and that's why we.
Yeah. So this is a shout out for United Divided. Kind of whenever this whole movement started, for me, whenever we came up with the name, it was, I didn't really want to talk about Republicans versus Democrats. I didn't want to talk about women versus men or trans versus no trans. To me, they are in many instances distractions. Now, to people that aren't involved in politics and how narrative controls happen, and Jimmy Dore hit on this, and Fox Kennedy hit on this. We are very manipulatable. I don't even know if that's a word, but we basically are kept in a box. And by thinking, Dr. Roy, because you're a little bit too far right, or you're wearing that very offensive Make America Great Again hat, I can't talk to you. Or there's no way you could be my doctor because you voted for Trump. I mean, it is such a divide and conquer platform. That's the left. I mean, the left has become, and I'll say this, I believe Republicans historically have been equally bad at this. They're compartmentalizing, and I mean, they're just not very good at marketing ever. Democrats are much better at marketing, and that's part of the whole shtick. But I don't know if you have a riff on Jimmy Dore, or if you have anything to say about it. Again, this is a leftist guy who's identifying what has happened to the party. And if we just give power to this person who everyone has said prior to Kamala Harris, who didn't get a single vote to get her position as vice president, has never won a vote in that regard. We give her power. What's going to stop her from going even further left? Except for she won't have power in Senate and House. But I don't know.
Well, I agree with that, and certainly she cannot deal with all the things that a president would need to be able to deal with. She cannot talk with other heads of state. You ask her a question, and she laughs, and then talks about being a middle class growing up, and she grew up in a closed area in Toronto or Montreal, I forget which.
Most of her formidable years, she was in Canada.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
and then she, I think, moved to Berkeley.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's not struggling the same way that she's pretending to struggle.
No.
Travis, anything to go there?
No, not really. On that one, it's another one that's pretty spot on. I mean, divided we're weak, united we stand. I mean, is that kind of how it goes?
It is. United around what, I guess, is the kind of the thing that we got going on for us right now.
Just a betterment of things.
Are we united around a fear for Trump? Are we united around a vision for breaking the things that are broken?
Well, yeah, I'm all in favor of breaking the things that are broken and fixing the things that are broken. Our foreign trade, our immigration are all broken. I mean, when you take people who are paid to guard our border and say you cannot prevent anyone from coming in the border, that's like opening the border to everybody. God only knows you get, crazy people, and you get criminals, and you get spies. How many terrorists have they arrested at the southern border? And multiply that by 10 of the ones who actually got through.
A conservative estimate that I heard, and these are backed up by government documents, is we've let in over 13,000 convicted murderers from other countries. These countries have cleared out their jails and shipped them through the Barrington Strait, and they're basically getting into our country, and they're not being tracked.
Sure.
How on God's earth?
And they're raping people and killing people too.
Let's not even talk about the sex trafficking and the child trafficking that's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, on to a lighter note. Dr. Roy shared something with me on Twitter. It's not really a lighter note, but you shared something with me on Twitter about the Singapore data, which revealed excess deaths tripling, a switch was flipped after the vaccine rollout.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any more to say on that.
Can I show your screen on that?
It's all over the world. Once the vaccine for COVID came in, the number of excess deaths increased all the way across the world. And Singapore is just one area. Brazil is another, and Australia and India and South Africa are all the same thing. Is the number of excess deaths is going up crazy.
That's kind of what we spoke about the last podcast too.
Yeah, and I mean, even today, a couple of weeks ago, one of the nurse practitioners that I collaborate with diagnosed a 20-year-old with myocarditis, and admittedly, the guy was overweight and may have been using drugs, but still, he's an otherwise healthy 20-year-old who now has shortened his lifespan because he has myocarditis.
Do we know, did he have the vax? Did he get the shot?
I don't know. But, you don't... most of the myocarditis are caused by viruses, and there is a way to tell whether it's regular, whether it's caused by the vaccine or whether it's caused by something else. And I don't know that our people around here are able to do that. but I ran through looking up some of the things, and but he's clearly got that. His cardiac output was 11%, and normally it ought to be 60%.
Well, before we shift into something much more positive here, as I pulled up this, can you go ahead and share my screen again, Travis? Yep. The Singapore data, I found something interesting here I hadn't seen before, nor have I researched it, but I want to talk about fact-checked by the People's Voice community. I've not seen that. Travis, have you seen that before?
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay, so I need to do some research on that, but it's interesting because Facebook has a fact-checking facility in it, I believe, but based on what I know about community notes with Twitter, that they allow people to come onto a thread and give, here, how about this information? Okay, well, here's a study that says this, and people can continue feeding a truth-seeking funnel on each particular topic. So I'm going to dig into that for sure, and then I want to shift to a little more positive. Make America healthy again, because I want to end this last session before election on a positive note, or on a directional note, meaning what are we voting for, or versus what are we voting against next Tuesday. I'm going to click on this. We're going to riff maybe just for a second on it. So okay, so I clicked on the censorship part of it, and it didn't really have any of that. I expected when I clicked on that fact check by the People's Voice community, we just need to research what that is. Maybe whether that's the
People's Voice LLC is both a civic and political organization. They do. It says the People's Voice does civic, non-political work, and its members and membership benefits are not affected by any sponsorships, donation, or involvement with the PAC by any member.
Dr. Roy, does this ring a bell to you? Whenever I was talking about truth-seeking apparatus, and having people just like you and me and or Travis in a community where we can look at stuff and break it down on a non-political basis and not be influenced by the money that might push the narrative from pharmaceutical or from the war industrial complex, the military industrial complex,
big pharma,
big ag, all these different things that manipulate the information. I mean, what most people in society don't understand is all mainstream media and all social media is about dollars being transferred from one person to the next, and it's all about views and controlling the mind and getting you to behave in a certain way. As it turns out, we are a very sick community right now. We're not healthy. We're not moving in a great direction. Our mental health is bad. Our physical health is bad. And I have not heard not one single iota from Kamala Harris or anybody on the left talking about, well, these people
we need to get better health.
These people in Maha really have a point here. Why aren't we having a real conversation about the things they're right about and have that debate?
No,
because they're controlled by money.
Trump is Hitler, and they leave it at that. And if you look at that, there are several hundred compounds that are illegal in other states or outside the United States, that they're illegal to be used, but they're put in our food all the time. Some of these colorings and some of these things that keep things going. We were talking about salt last week. And
we got a couple more things we're going to add on.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we're getting, and God, you walk through the cereal aisles. Cereal aisle is like 2 aisles long in Walmart.
Yeah,
and I just want to go in there with an axe,
a flamethrower. I think a flamethrower would work better.
Flamethrower would be better, but just destroy all of those. If you want to eat cereal for breakfast, then cook some damn oatmeal.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a whole. We've been down that rabbit hole that you're talking about right there. But how European countries don't even sell the same cereal products that we do.
Like they sell the same cereal products, but the ingredients are a whole lot less.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with the flour.
Ingredients meaning the ingredients that you can't pronounce and that have potential problems with your body.
Sure, and flour. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm gluten intolerant." No, you're not. You're intolerant of all the crap that's in the flour.
Yeah, and anyone that will even try to dispute that, please come to me and we will have a conversation. Because traveling to Europe and eating their fresh bread and their sourdough that wouldn't probably make it shelf stable for 2 days because it would mold and go bad. Mm-hmm. I went gluten free for several years, and it was because we felt like my kid was having behavioral issues. Getting off gluten did actually help his brain because I don't think he was getting that enriched. That the bleach stuff and all the nasty stuff that comes in our processed bread. But going to Europe, I was able to eat bread, and I never got bloated. I never got fog. Mm-hmm. I never got any of that. So it's just a difference in how things are made. And that to me, again, is make America healthy again. Like if you're going to continue listening to the food distributors and the big ag and big pharma, they want to keep us exactly where they are because that's where their profits are coming from right now. Like we as Americans pay way more for stuff in our health costs than European countries, but it's because they do a lot of preventative stuff that we don't do, meaning better food, better water.
True.
Do you have anything, Travis?
I do not.
Okay.
I will say one thing. There's a bakery here in town called Great Harvest, and they're part of a nationwide group of bakeries, and they mill their own flour right there in the bakery. So they get actually from Montana wheat shipped in, and they mill that wheat right there in the bakery and use that. So it probably has fewer additives than what you buy off the shelves in here, or God forbid what they put in cereal.
I will say you did. So I've kind of reflected a little more, but you were just talking about making America healthy again, and I mean just another reason that if you're on the fence to go one direction over the other. And I think a couple of things could happen. I mean, one thing is it's ridiculous how much it costs to eat healthy. I think that is, and I think that's something financially where we talk about the cost of groceries and things. I think that will change if you go with Trump and all of the people that he's looking to assist him to make America great again, make America healthy again, whatever it might be. I think just the cost of healthy food is one issue, but then the other issue is what Bobby Kennedy Jr. is talking about, and it's just and what you're talking about, all the additives, all the crap that just doesn't need to really be in there that's in there.
Well, it's the cost of health versus the cost of savings cost that you win by not being sick and not. It's hard for people to truly understand this because you want to go to the grocery and you want to spend X amount of dollars, and I'm on a budget and whatever, but it's never mind that my health insurance is $1,500 a month, and I have to pay for something that I don't ever use, but it's a crazy cost. But cost savings in the long term by eating better food it's hard to even measure. That's not really quantifiable.
Yeah, I'm going to push. Agreed. But there are a lot of families out there that can't. They have to get bologna, cheese, and bread because that's what they can afford. And I mean, over the long term, they unfortunately. There's a story there about
if it's good bread.
No, it's not good bread. What I'm saying is it's 99-cent loaf of bread. It's bologna, meat off the butcher's floor. It's
Velveeta cheese.
Yeah, it's non-name brand. Or maybe it's non-name brand cheese. It's just like a Walmart cheese.
You push back on me pretty good.
That's all that they can afford.
You can push back on me pretty good there, but I also know.
What about the 25%? Like she was talking about how
EBT. Like there's money that poor people can have for food.
There can be,
and they can buy, but they're buying
But there's also a lot of
Coca-Colas
families
and cigarettes with those.
Oh yeah.
But okay, now you're falling into you're falling into a hole here.
You can't buy cigarettes with those, but you can sure as hell buy Coca-Cola.
All the sugar products.
You're kind of falling into a hole there a little bit, and I'm all. Believe me, you and I are mostly on the same page on a lot of things. But there, not only are there families that can't afford it, but maybe there's families that, due to the way the EBT is constructed, the family can't qualify for it. They make just enough money not to qualify for it, but then they've got a mortgage, then they've got the insurances that they have to have, the massive health insurance costs that they don't even use, but they have to
exactly
have
what you're talking about. I know people that quit $75,000 a year jobs to get below a certain amount of income, so so they actually qualify for all these different programs.
That is a thing. But so I hear what you're saying, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying, that in the long term, yes, there's cost savings, but there's a lot of people that just live week to week that can't look at the long term. Just like there's a story, there's some word out there about I know. I'm talking about this. Have you heard about the boots? Have you heard about the thing about a rich man can buy a pair of boots for $100, and that pair of boots will last him 5 years. And then the poor man has to spend $15 on his boots, but they wear out every 6 months, so he has to constantly pay more. And by the end of the 5 years, he's paid more, but it's only because he can't afford that cost up front to save in the long term.
Okay, Travis, I think you said that I fell in a hole, but I think
about the cigarettes and beer and shit.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, but I think it's actually a trap for you, and here's why. The politicians will say people can't afford cheap food. They can't afford good food that's also cheap. Meanwhile, they subsidize.
What good food is cheap?
Okay,
sorry.
Let me finish my point.
Okay.
They subsidize other countries all around the world. We send $185 billion
Yeah, that's wrong.
to Ukraine.
Sure.
So instead of sending $185 billion to Ukraine, how about send that towards making a food system that can give us better food that's affordable for most people?
Absolutely.
So you're right. It is a trap. It's a trap that, because you and I could argue, well, a person that doesn't make any money can't afford good food. I agree with that. I do. And does EBT qualify for everyone? No, it doesn't. Is it favor certain people over others? It absolutely does. Politicians do that. That's them. It's a wedge that's driven in every single gap between people, like the rich versus poor argument and whatever.
Well, make them fat, dumb, and sick, and they'll keep voting for
good
us.
Food and good water is more expensive. You and I agree on that. Quality food is. However, we're spending taxpayer money on all kinds of things that are not making Americans healthy again or making America great again. The whole point of
we're on the same page there.
These two things colliding, which is a Kennedy movement with health and a Trump movement with middle class, hardworking people are tired of getting screwed. It's because our government and the revolving door pharma people that are going into the FDA, that are going into all these different, they're creating laws. They're creating rules that they know the backdoor way around, and then they get hired by the companies that they know how to get around those things, and they keep the power, they keep the money. So it is a trap, but I want you to know I haven't fallen into it.
The trap I'm talking about is the people using EBT to buy cigarettes and beer. That's the whole.
You can't buy cigarettes.
And beer with EBT.
I get that. What I'm saying, he was just playing, and there are a lot of people out there that misuse their government assistance, if that's where you're going after with that. I can agree with.
There's a lot of con.
Well, they'll trade their that for cigarettes and beer.
Yeah. Okay, but if you actually probably did the work, they might only be 5% or 10%, but it's the amount that pisses off.
No.
Okay.
I know people that own gas stations. I've had this conversation ad nauseum. It is not. They're not using it on good food most of the time.
But you say but how many people are going to that gas station to get their food with their EBT? They might be going to Walmart, or they might be going somewhere else with that EBT.
If you go to Walmart, you see people with a cart that is full of soda
and junk food.
Like 4 boxes of cereal and 2 cases of
I actually think we're on something. I think this is beautiful. You're shaking your head, and I think you think there's division here. You put your finger right on it. Why don't we make an EBT, give them more money into that account, and only put stuff that are approved by the Make America Healthy Again
I would agree with that.
type
Sure.
of thing. So, give them a little more money, but they're going to, instead of buying, bologna, is it bad? Certain bologna can be, but you can also get good bologna that's processed in a way that's.
I was just trying to think of cheap meat. But
I get what you're saying.
You can get ham or beef that's been sliced.
Whatever it is. Again, if you give them a little more money in the EBT, but don't let them buy sugar. Don't let them buy the different ultra processed foods that we're talking about with that.
I saw
incentivize, like, instead of perverse incentives, give them incentives that are like pushing them towards health. I think that's where we're heading. So,
I was in the checkout line at I think it was Schnucks, and this lady came up there and she was using her EBT card to buy milk, and she was buying whole milk, and they said, nope, you can't use that. You got to buy 2%. And so she had to go back and switch the
EBT won't allow whole milk?
I don't know what it was, but she got turned away from buying whole milk. Now, kids need whole milk.
Yeah, that makes zero sense to me. But
yeah.
I don't
know. Anyway.
Yes, I was shaking my head, and I just don't want to fall, because a lot of times I get into that stereotyping mentality, and I don't like it, and so I'm kind of seeing it from the outside, and I'm saying something, but I do it too, and I hate that I do it.
I'll be more than happy to take you to Walmart, and you can see on Saturdays these people with carts full of cereal and soda.
Again,
that's out there, but
there is not a real vegetable in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so
they don't even buy frozen vegetables.
I'm gonna join Travis's side just a little bit here.
Yeah.
The food, the ultra processed shit that is on the shelves is addictive food. Like, the more sugar that you eat,
the better.
The more you're going to want it. And so I would come to this point where I say the people that Travis said I was stereotyping. I did do a little stereotyping. Sometimes stereotyping is actually, needed. If there's an all points bulletin for a serial murder on the thing, like, you gotta kind of look at who you're looking for. You can't look for somebody that's not in the right category.
Well,
the point of it is, to me, again, this is a super intelligent conversation at this point, is if you give those people at Walmart a list of things that are going to make them healthy, and they have an education on it, they may choose to take their other money and buy junk. And you can't, like, I'm not saying ban all junk. What I will say is European Union got a lot of things right by not letting the companies that make these ultra processed things have the chemicals and the dangerous toxins in them that make this behavior kind of a circular motion.
Well, and you talk to these people, I got to have my Diet Coke.
Well, they think that's healthy.
A guy with diabetes is drinking 10 Diet Cokes a day.
They've been told it's healthy.
Yeah.
Just the word diet in the front.
The FDA said, well, you shouldn't drink so many sugar-filled Cokes. And instead, you drink something that's got rat poison in it. That's
sure.
Excellent. Okay, so let's pivot. So, Travis, thank you for that pushback. Actually, I feel like if we are in a truth-seeking conversation here, in this one little fine-tune, this conversation needs to be had at the highest levels. Like when Make America Healthy Again, you need the smartest nutritionists and people who are in there to make these foundational changes. So these hard conversations are going to be had, and they're going to be had at the highest level. So hopefully we can help contribute to that.
Yeah.
I got another clip here. It may or may not be perfectly queued up as far as where we are in this conversation, but it does have to do with corruption in the government and what we're voting for, what we're going towards versus what we're going away from.
This email from your IRS supervisor after Hunter Biden's guilty plea. Thank you for your commitment to the mission, which culminated in a great conviction.
Those are words that are not supported by the actions of the agency.
What you're saying is that within the IRS, there is disparate treatment of American taxpayers.
What they call is sensitive investigations.
But sensitive investigation sounds like code for powerful elite people.
There's a list in the Internal Revenue Manual that says what a sensitive person is, and it's exactly that.
There was no question in your mind the big guy was Joe Biden.
We corroborated the big guy was Joe Biden, yes.
We knew that the laptop was real. DOJ knew that the laptop was real.
FBI knew the laptop was real.
There were a lot of overt investigative steps that we were not allowed to take because we had an upcoming election.
When we were doing the interviews, the prosecutors specifically told us that they didn't want to ask about the big guy because they knew it was Joe Biden.
You came forward as whistleblowers. Your information was accurate, yet you're sitting here today with us alleging that you've been punished every step of the way by the government bureaucracy.
IRS is just has a smothering blanket on me, hoping that I quit, that they find some way to terminate me or commit suicide or something.
And I'm up against a machine that has millions of dollars, that has the ability to fight me.
People have to have confidence justice is going to be administered fairly, regardless of who you are.
So that's me paying homage to the countless people who, during COVID and since COVID and all these different things that are going on within our government institutions, it takes brave people within these places to step out and to speak up. And it, to me, you and I circle back around to the golden duct tape and the golden handcuffs.
Hang on. There, show it again. There you go. Yep, there it is.
Golden
duct tape. Golden handcuffs.
duct tape.
So these two guys work within the IRS. They're whistleblowers talking about how the IRS is weaponized. We talk about lawfare a lot. We talk about unfair usage of government power. And whenever the picture, when I think of totalitarianism and communism, is to me is always the big red boot that's stomping on your throat. And you have people within an institution, an organization, that know something is wrong and know that something is being covered up, and for what? And they are unable or dissuaded or punished for speaking up and speaking out. Again, I'm saying this because the choice that we have next Tuesday is, if you have people within a government institution who knows there's corruption, that knows there's problems, those people should rise to the top. Those people should be the ones that we are looking to help fix these institutions. And instead, they're being systematically dismantled by the media and by the government powers and the blob. I don't even know what to say. This is emotional to me to this point, because when I talk about hypocrisy and I talk about lies, and you have people who are brave enough to step out and say something, it just disgusts me. And Elon Musk shared this on Twitter, by the way, in case you didn't see it. But he's going to be the Doge if Trump is elected, meaning
I sure hope so.
Department of Government Efficiency. I would think these two guys within this one particular institution might be somewhere on this panel.
Sure.
Other whistleblowers might be incentivized to come out and say, here's some problems. Now, maybe some of these whistleblowers are going to make some stuff up. Maybe some of them aren't going to have all the facts 100% accurate. The best way to get rid of stuff that's inaccurate is to bring it to light and to talk about it and to prove it right or prove it wrong. Mm-hmm. Not to bury it and not to destroy people. I don't know. Maybe no riff needed, but if you got something else to say, I got plenty of things to talk about.
I'll say one thing about that. Catherine Herridge is a very good person. She's
journalist.
Smart.
She's one of the best journalists we have,
yeah.
I think. Yep.
And she's out there pushing. And she's had her own problems. She's gotten fired a couple of times simply because of things that she dug up.
All right, so spinning right back into...
all right, The Guardian, I love them because they will say stuff about what's going on in the United States when our media will not.
Okay, so Travis, I don't know if you've already pulled it up here. I didn't even see this picture. Hopefully this is the right clip.
Not eat a dog. And they want everyone to think that he's a crazy anti-vaxxer. His views on vaccines are much more nuanced than that, and they're ones that a lot of Americans would agree with.
And I've never been anti-vaccine. I'm called anti-vaccine because that's a way of kind of marginalizing and discrediting me. But what I've said is I'm pro-science and pro-safety, and we ought to subject vaccines, which are mandated for healthy children, not for sick people. We ought to subject them to at least the kind of rigorous placebo-controlled trials that are mandated for every other medicine. It's the only medicine that's exempt from pre-licensing safety trial.
I believe we should have safe vaccines, and I believe we should have robust science, and I believe that we should have independent regulators who are not financially tied
Boom.
to the companies that make our vaccines. There's a couple of problems with vaccines. I had 3 vaccines as a kid. Today's kids get 72. And the reason they get so many is because they're so profitable. And they were made profitable in 1986 when Congress passed a law.
I'll let you come back to that.
I'll fight on that all the time.
Dr. Roy?
Yeah.
He has published multiple books talking about vaccines. So I'm going to push back right on you whenever I know you're going to push on him. He's published multiple books. He's got citations to every book, and he's not been sued by any of these vaccine makers for what he has said. So just to provide a little attention, I know where you're going to go, and I want to hear it, and I think this is a good truth-seeking point.
Yeah.
Let me finish the clip, and then we can come back to it.
That said, you can't sue a vaccine company, so no matter how toxic the ingredient, no matter how negligent the company, no matter how grievous your injury, you can't sue them, which means that company has no incentive to make them safer. And remember, the 4 companies that make all 72 of the vaccines that are now mandated for our kids are all serial felons.
He has been especially critical of COVID vaccines, but his viewpoints are backed by numerous scientific studies and statements from highly qualified scientists and doctors. I will link to a comprehensive article about that below. Part of the reason you haven't heard more about these studies or highly qualified scientists and doctors is that big pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer have so much money that they can advertise on all the corporate media outlets, so they can prevent certain stories from ever going out.
Is brought to you by Pfizer. CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer. Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. This Week with George Stephanopoulos is brought to you by
It is funny when you look at it like
and
this.
now a CBS Sports Update brought to you by Pfizer.
Meet the Press Data Download. Brought to you by Pfizer.
This portion of CBS This Morning sponsored by Pfizer.
And by the way, the media has suggested that Kennedy is some kind of grifter who went into anti-vaccine advocacy for the money. But if anything, speaking out against vaccines is obviously a risk for anybody's reputation and earning potential. Until RFK Jr. became a so-called anti-vaxxer, he was well regarded as an environmental lawyer. As a Kennedy, he could have coasted on his name and lived out his days comfortably. It's much more likely that he would have earned more money by never saying anything about vaccines. I encourage you to actually listen to what he has to say in his own words. For example, here's a 45-minute speech he gave when he suspended his presidential campaign and announced that he was backing Trump. I'll link to that below. The media has also lied about Joe Biden. Here's Joe Scarborough.
All right. I don't think that was that's just in the vaccine realm. Go ahead and push back.
Well, the first thing I would do if Trump is elected is forbid them from advertising.
Forbid Pharma from advertising?
Forbid Pharma from advertising.
Because we're only one of 2 countries that allow that on television.
Yeah,
be sure to ask your doctor.
The United States. But that's one of the things.
I believe that will happen, actually.
Yeah. They did that with cigarettes, so they can do that with Big Pharma. The second thing is a significant number of those vaccines that your kids get are life-saving. And the one that I'm going to use as the example is Haemophilus. And
yeah, we've talked about that several times, Doc. And I don't think anyone is going to disagree with any one particular vaccine in what he said is true, though. You know, I don't know how many vaccines I had. I know I had like measles, mumps, rubella. I think they were all separate at the time. I don't think they were.
No, it was all together. Measles, mumps,
in
rubella.
1970s. It was
in 1970s.
Okay,
and polio. Those polio, we have just about eradicated polio.
Okay.
There are only 2 countries that have active polio now. It's Afghanistan and Pakistan.
I agree with all that. And let's stick to the truth-seeking here. Let's stick to the argument from 5 or 6 maybe vaccines whenever I was a kid to now 72, which happened in very rapid succession. All I'm saying is, and this is where the anti-vax conversation needs to go for the truth seeking for me, is we need to understand what each of those are independently, each one of those vaccines independently, what they're promised to do, put them in a truth-seeking apparatus with countless scientists and doctors and information and data, track that data long-term, and wherever we can spread them out and not keep hitting kids in the first few years of life with 72 vaccines. I think there's an effect there, and we've talked about autism a lot. There's a lot of autism stuff coming out too. There's a compiling effect that I don't believe is healthy. And that's all I'm arguing back on with you. But I know I know certain vaccines are good. I'm not arguing that.
Let me tell you,
about that.
There was no polio vaccine when I was a child, and my parents were just crazy about me staying away from other kids in the spring and summer because that's when polio was common. I saw with my own eyes children who came in with Haemophilus, and Haemophilus is a bacteria. It's common in the area. I mean, it's around. People can get it from dogs. They can get it from the environment, but it causes a severe enlargement of the back of the throat that will cause these children to actually be unable to breathe. I've seen kids come in that have quit breathing and had to have a tracheotomy put in, and they quit breathing and they lost about 85% of their brain power. So it was terrible.
So I think Chad kind of feels the same way with this. I wish we had the time to sit there and go back to that screen that showed all of them and go through all of them, but I doubt there's 72 polios. Like, I doubt that there's...
No, you only get two polio shots.
That's not what I mean.
Life.
I mean, I don't think there are 72 things that are as bad as polio that need to be... Maybe needs to be 30. Okay, yeah. Okay, you keep riding that pony, but...
Let's not focus on one, okay? What he and I are coming back with just a little tension of saying... We need independent-minded people that are looking at...
That's already been done, Chad.
I don't... All 72
I wholly disagree with you.
I wholly disagree with you.
Done.
Don't agree with you.
You're okay. You're fucking normies. You don't know what medicine is like.
Oh, Dr. Roy, now, come on.
You don't know what it's like to tell the parents of a 2-year-old that their child is brain dead because of a Haemophilus infection.
Again, we're not arguing against Haemophilus.
Yeah,
I'm not arguing against polio.
But are there 72 things that are as bad as polio and Haemophilus that we need to have that many? Is all Chad's saying. I'm not necessarily...
There are a significant number of those.
I would like to know those independently and individually.
Well, okay. There's individual on all of those. Now, some of these ones I don't believe with because they've never been able to successfully come up with a vaccine for children anyway of some of the respiratory things, but they certainly do with pneumococcus in adults, and that is a serious thing. If you get pneumonia, the chances are you're going to be hospitalized.
I think your lawn guy is trying to go over the top of whatever you're saying.
Yeah, I was about ready to say, do we want to take a break for a minute? But now he's finally moving. He was just sitting there.
Okay, and I know you're upset about newborn babies getting hepatitis B vaccine, but hepatitis B kills people.
Okay, so
and it gives them cancer.
Okay,
if they recover from that, they get liver cancer and they die.
Okay, all I'm going to say again is I know you're using Twitter and Grok now. You're using truth-seeking apparatus.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning towards what I'm hearing from RFK, who has, to sue companies for environmental issues and to sue companies for vaccine issues, you have to know the insides and outs of all the data. You have teams of attorneys who drive policy. Attorneys drive policy because if someone can be sued for negligence or sued for putting something into a body that can harm people, they won't do it. If they have an open policy where no matter what, you can't sue them, that's a perverse block of stopping bad actors. And there's, to me, you look at COVID, you look at the vaccine, the pushing and the rollout, no offense to you, you sound exactly like the people that say you have to take these COVID vaccines or everything's going to be worse. I disagree with that. I just disagree with it.
I'm totally against COVID vaccines.
And I think that
fucking normie.
That was forced. That was forced because it happened so fast, and the adverse effects happened so rapidly that we all had to have a come to Jesus on that. There was no avoiding it. What I'm saying is, I believe that we are not being told the whole truth with this entire panel of 72 vaccines. What he keeps saying is, whether you believe me or not, or agree with me or not, or because you're the doctor and the authority, your opinion is the only one that matters. That's not reality. If you listen to the people, Rogan's talking about a lot. He's having more vaccine. You listen to Kaylee and Cassie Means. They're speaking out against the child vaccine rollout. There's people that are coming up that have a lot more knowledge than me that I'm listening to as a sounding board, mostly because I don't think they're lying to me. They don't have perverse incentives. I know you've got a long track record of doing what you think is best for your patients and clients. I wouldn't be talking to you if I didn't agree with you there. Right. If I didn't believe that's what you believed and what you were doing, I wouldn't even talk to you. What I'm saying is, I think we're on the cusp of information changing that is going to bring some more things to light that I think you need to try to be open to. Like, try to be open to the fact. Come in and say, let's act like I'm not a doctor and that I'm looking at all this information for the first time. You can always come back and say, but I am a doctor. You can always do that.
Yeah.
But anytime I enter a debate with somebody that I know I don't agree with, and even listening to the Ben Shapiro and the Sam Harris, I can't almost stand listening to Sam Harris, but I want to hear what he has to say, and I'm going to try to put myself in his shoes. And this is what I'm trying to get you to. Like, come into it. This particular, next time we have a vaccine conversation, come into it not as a doctor, okay? Come into it with not your history of what you've known to be right and how you've been trained. Come into it looking at, say, Grok, listening to the people that are coming out as a very critical of vaccine industry, including Robert F. Kennedy, who stands to have a lot of power in that realm pretty shortly. So, like, if you're going to be on his think tank, if he's going to hire you to come in, I feel like you need to be able to look at all sides and look at the information and changes in data. And I think a lot of the data that we're relying on has been manipulated by bad actors.
Maybe.
Well, it has.
But I will tell you this, that a lot of the things that we vaccinate against have disappeared. They are no longer a problem, and the reason is because we have herd immunity. I'll tell you, that was the most heart-wrenching thing that I ever had to do, was to tell the parents of a 2-year-old that their child was brain dead.
And was it for Haemophilus?
Haemophilus.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is that? What is that?
That is a bacteria, and it causes an infection in the back part of the larynx, and it blocks the airway.
Is that a larger condition called something else? What is the condition called that happens? It's not Haemophilus. That's the actual
epiglottitis.
Epiglottitis. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The epiglottis is a little flap in your larynx. And it is hit by the Haemophilus bacteria. And Haemophilus will also cause pneumonia, too. And I've seen some adults die from Haemophilus pneumonia. I had to tell the family that the grandpa's not going to make it because he's got Haemophilus pneumonia. And we're giving him antibiotics, but he may not make it.
Well, I think this is a perfect segue into what we're working on here is fighting medical conspiracy theories
versus
medical truth seeking. And anytime you get into everything that turns out to be true starts off as a conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
Like like you're I don't know what your record is now for
37-0.
So, and I feel like I'm pretty close at hearing different people that I trust and them saying it enough times over time that it creates a signal in my head. That's just like it's not a light bulb or I have the answer, but it definitely is one of those things that, it inserts in you and you're like, okay, next time I hear something on this, now I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen a little deeper into that.
Well, I'll throw 3 of them out here. Hepatitis B, polio, and Haemophilus are very important. There are 3 other ones.
We've talked about this ad nauseum. What I want to say is there's a lot of information. You talked about polio. Let's just focus on that one. Okay, let's just focus on polio alone. And I'm going to say this just to say that I'm hearing it, not to say that you're just going to say it's wrong or I'm a effing what's my
normie.
Normie. I didn't even know how to spell that, and I don't know what it means.
NORMIE.
I sound like a moron already, but anyway, Rogan has said this multiple times. He's talked to people in the vaccine realm, and apparently there's the whole polio rollout, the vaccine. The narrative is not quite doesn't exactly fully line up with why polio went away. I'm going to leave it at that. And I know where you came from. We've talked about polio multiple times. Here's what I want. I want for the next podcast, I want to come back, use Grok, use whatever, you can look at the data that you're going to pull up from your medical docs, and let's figure out what these different people are saying and have a conversation. Because, again, to create the truth-seeking apparatus to say, well, if the polio conspiracy theory is wrong, we need an apparatus that helps us flush it out as fast as possible. That's what these think tanks need to do, and what this think tank is going to try to do. So let's table the polio, because there's a lot of other stuff I want to talk about. And again, I highly recommend anybody who wants to.
I'm gonna bring you a picture of 50 kids in iron lungs.
No, dude, polio was real.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it wasn't real. I'm not saying it wasn't terrible.
Hepatitis B is real.
I'm not even saying that vaccines didn't help it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, when we're talking about right now vaccine hesitancy amongst a lot of people, and even Travis, who I know is not necessarily vaccine hesitant, he's hearing things now that he's like, well, maybe I shouldn't trust that the way I used to trust it. So it's creating a slack. And I'm not pointing you out necessarily, Travis, but I'm hearing this from a lot of people. It's not just Travis. It's, people like, well, we just were lied to pretty significantly, and people are dying. You just talked about myocarditis, and is that potentially from the COVID vaccine? All these different things is like, okay, well, we need to get to the bottom of it real fast. Like, we need to figure it out, because if kids aren't going to continue taking 72 vaccines and that's safe, good, let's do it. If there's 10 or 15 of them in there that maybe aren't that safe, well, let's pull those out.
Well,
maybe
I can tell you that 10 or 15 of them are not that bad.
Okay.
But I can tell you that some of them are real bad. And the fact that I practiced medicine in the 1970s and saw some of these, and I as a child I went through polio, and I went through whooping cough, and all of those things that people died from. It was just, at that point, we didn't have much in the way of vaccines. And if your kid got polio, then he was going to be crippled. He was going to wear braces. I had 2 or 3 people that were in my medical school class who were on braces from having had polio as children. And I took care of people who were completely paralyzed from polio, and were on iron lungs at home. So it's for real.
Well, what we're trying to prevent, though, is like an anecdotal cure. Like, if they would have rolled out a big vaccine push and COVID would have went away like they promised, we probably wouldn't be talking about COVID anymore.
No.
Right? So I understand the argument for polio vaccine good. I get it. I do. And I wasn't really trying to isolate on polio, but you keep coming back to that one, so I think we can. And then I just heard you say, I don't think it was for the first time, that not all these vaccines in the 72, in the thing that Travis pointed out.
I got to look at each one of them, and I know the pediatricians are the ones that are pushing all of these. And
how much time do they have to really get into looking at every vaccine that comes out and spending the amount of time?
There are a lot of people that are doing research on that, and I'll have to look at each and every one of them. But obviously, the pediatricians are trying to keep the kids as healthy as possible.
I don't know.
I just want to chime in with one.
My pediatrician tried to push COVID vaccines on both my kids. So yeah. I'm not fully bought into that, but go ahead.
Well, I just came from my physician, and he didn't even.
He is not a pediatrician.
He is.
He's a butt specialist.
No, he's not.
He did inject something.
He actually is both an internal medicine and a pediatrician.
Wow. You're that. And, what's that movie that the guy keeps going to his pediatrician, and he's like, wasn't it Will Ferrell?
Yeah,
but it was an elf. So it was.
You're right on one.
Oh, okay. But
anyway, you had a point you wanted to make.
I just wanted. So Doc just mentioned something about doing their research on everything, and RFK said something. RFK Jr. said something a little earlier that I want to go back to from our last podcast. Is I want to make sure that we're all, because I didn't know this, and I know that I'm not an idiot. Well, that was something an idiot might say, but
yeah.
What I didn't know, and RFK Jr. talked about placebo testing or. Not testing, but trials and everything. And I didn't know that you can get rid of a control group by hitting a certain efficacy percentage to where it is morally necessary to give the control group even this vaccine or this drug or whatever that they're testing. So you can give that to the control group and get rid of the control group, and now you no longer have full information on what the drug's going to do.
No,
you're not creating good data.
That's because you end the trial.
It ends the trial.
And they ended it when the information wasn't looking good.
No, they ended it when the information was looking very, very good to the point where the people were getting more.
That's not what happened in this particular. We
I was talking about COVID. Yeah, that was more of a COVID.
That's how they pushed COVID through.
Yeah,
they pushed COVID through because they said this is showing it's so good, it's so promising that we're not going to do the control group anymore, and they washed that out. And we know.
Yeah.
So it physically did happen. And now we have the repercussions of it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so was that the first time it ever happened?
Probably not. And once again, I didn't know that could even happen. Like I thought, well, the point of the trials, because when you look at, there's a movie, it's Brendan Fraser. Now, granted, it's a movie, but whatever. But they had to have a control group for whatever drug trial or drug that they were using, and no one ever in that movie said, "Well, this is working for these people, so we need to really give it to these people." No, there was a control group, and it's almost a death sentence because now they're in the control group and they're not getting the actual medicine. What's the word I'm looking for? Where it's new and like not even proven. What's the word I'm looking for? Jesus. But it's not. It's a very. The word is eluding me. My uncle even took some for his pancreatic cancer, but just drugs that are not even there. He's doing these tests to try to.
Chemotherapy and that sort of thing.
No, yeah. Well, anyway, I'm sounding like an idiot, but the point is that everywhere that I've ever seen a depiction of trials, once again, usually movies or TV shows, that never happened. Like they still kept the control group.
No, they keep the control group until the actual group that they're working on it improves to the point that it would be immoral to not give the medication to the people.
But Dr. Roy, that didn't happen in this last case. It was an absolute fucking lie. It's a lie. So when did the lie start? Was this the first time ever that they changed the trial mid-trial to sell a vaccine?
I can tell you they did that with Gardasil too.
Okay, well, so great. Yeah. There's two examples, and maybe you're. I mean, you could be fully honed in on this thing and paying attention to it all the time, which is phenomenal. You got a huge brain, but the fact that they've done it now, and they're not willing to admit that they did it. They're not willing to. They're lying, and they're.
I am not a friend of big pharma.
I know, and now they're trying to push RNA into all of the vaccines and remake them again. I'm just
experimental. Sorry, it just hit
Yeah.
me. Experimental medicine was what he was. Anyway, sorry. I wanted to know that I had to continue. Sorry. Experimental.
Well,
my
it's
brain was
also
hurting.
experimental until it's proven to be effective.
You posted something the other
Right.
here. It's all anecdotal till it's not.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
It's all experimental until
if
it's not?
If you get enough anecdotal information, it becomes, reasonable.
Anyway, the COVID stick was experimental, and there's no way that it had an efficacy. Good Lord, I can't ever say that word. Of enough, whatever that percentage is, to blast through the control group. It was just, I feel, and I'm not a huge conspiracy guy necessarily.
Well, but the push was get there were people that told me we are not coming out of our house until there is an effective vaccine.
But it wasn't that effective. You could still get it.
Well, yeah. You didn't know that.
Some people.
You didn't.
In podcast, mic drop.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. That was
okay.
That hit me the wrong way. I don't know why.
They came out pushing this thing.
You didn't know that it was a lie.
No, you didn't know it was a lie.
Roy just made the case.
I was skeptical from the beginning because I saw people who were vaccinated who got sick again and had to go back in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I at Rotary one time, I stood up and talked to the head of Deaconess, and I said, "Why are you telling us about this? You've got the majority of your people you've got in your hospital now with COVID have been vaccinated."
Hey, Dr. Roy.
What?
How long has the media been controlled by pharmaceutical companies?
Ever since they let them start advertising.
Okay. Give or take.
30 years.
Okay. So effectively, my brain right now says one of the greatest things if Donald Trump was elected for the first time back in 2016, the greatest thing in my opinion that he did was start to destroy the mainstream media. Yeah. When I say mainstream media, it's really just propaganda media for the Blob government, but it's funded almost fully by two big groups, and that is pharmaceutical and that it's the war machine.
Yep.
And so I have a hard time believing anything because here's what I know has happened. The media is controlled by Pharma. Pharma said there's this study that just came out that starts making this particular vaccine look bad. You can't pinpoint that. You can't spotlight it. We're actually going to have Google and these other organizations. We're going to have it removed. We're going to take information away from people so they can't make more informed decisions later. 30 years is a process of that was pre-internet. That was pre-whatever. So you could literally look at papers, and I would say the control apparatus probably wasn't as efficient as it is now. Right now, I don't believe it's like you and I have talked about them, Google taking our ivermectin videos down, YouTube taking our ivermectin videos down. By doing that, they hamstring future generations. If they were successful and able to do that against us, all I'm saying is I don't trust anything they say about vaccines anymore. And I want to trust them again. I do. I believe there's a process to make that happen. And I think the process is out there. Maybe we come back and it's only 50-something vaccines needed. I don't know. Maybe it's 71. Maybe it's 70. I don't know what the number is. I don't trust the process, nor do I trust the people that are enforcing the process.
Each one is separate.
It's still controlled by pharmaceutical, and it's still controlled by the media.
Well, and the thing of what they advertise on TV, they don't advertise drugs that are widespread. They advertise drugs that are expensive and that are for small groups. I mean, how many people in the United States have Crohn's disease? The answer is about 4%. And they advertise Crohn's disease and...
what about ED? I see so many ED medication ads. How many people actually you think have
erectile dysfunction?
Yeah,
that's a metabolic. It's a metabolic issue. So our metabolic structure. It's probably pretty high.
Yeah. It is. It's probably about 30 or 40%.
If we fix our metabolic problems, a lot of that's going to go away.
A lot of that's going to go away. But diabetes will cause impotence because of the effect on the nerves. But they're advertising a very expensive drug for something that only occurs in about 4% of
We're back to Crohn's.
the patient, Crohn's disease,
Okay.
or a lot of the other things that they advertise for. But they don't go out and advertise drugs for high blood pressure or for high cholesterol and that sort of thing, because they're all generic now.
Well, but what's the weight loss drug? Because that's getting
Ozempic.
pushed. Yeah,
Oh,
Ozempic. Ozempic's getting thrown out there a lot right now.
Well, Ozempic is for weight loss, and Tirapazide is the other one, and it's a whole lot more effective than that one is. And
There's still a lot of truth seeking that needs to be had that hasn't been around for a long time. Kaylee and Cassie Means are talking out very strongly about that.
There are some
Agreed. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just
bad-
saying I see a lot of ads.
Yeah,
for that.
they're advertising for that,
And it's effective at helping people lose weight. And it's more of an easy way to lose weight. Not to minimize it, not to say certain people shouldn't have used it or whatever. I'm always back to the root cause.
And it's a metabolic thing too, because the only reason they gained weight was that they don't have they have insulin resistance.
Well, men gain weight because testosterone levels have fallen, and they do have stuff in the water that turns frogs gay. So
Sure.
they do.
I think
And
I gain weight because I just have a seafood diet. Where
We're gonna
seafood and I eat it.
no.
So, I mean,
Seafood.
Don't shoot yourself like that, dude.
Yeah.
We have been lied to at every level. I got some more clips here.
And there's a lot of estrogen that goes into the water.
Yeah, I got some water clips. So we're definitely. I'm trying to push a little bit here because we need to get out for to fill. Are you going to be able to eat?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not hearing your belly growling.
It's not like the
Sound like you were gonna eat me.
fourth turn at Talladega.
So this is a quick intro into the weekly ivermectin conversation. I don't have.
All right.
There's a Rogan clip that I want everyone to hear.
Yeah.
Are you up? All right.
200 congresspeople have been treated with ivermectin for COVID. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
200. I believe you could probably find it in Dr. Pierre Corey's Twitter page. Yeah, before there were vaccines, this was a common treatment, an off-label treatment
You
for
bet.
COVID. Now, I do not know what the motivation for demonizing this particular medication is.
Because
Again,
it's
I'm not a doctor
cheap.
and I'm not a scientist. But I would imagine some of it has to do with money. The reason
Yeah.
being is that it is a generic drug now.
Yeah.
The patent has run out. So anybody can make it. And it's
Well, I think that turned right back. What you just said encapsulated this kind of was like an
it's
exclamation point on it. Yeah. So let's not fully
Here
plug.
you go.
Hang on. Let me go to Doc.
Let's
There
do
it
it.
is.
Let's do a real short one. Dr. Roy's selling ivermectin. You can reach out to us and
Got
get it.
Ivermectin tablets, and they come in blister packs of about 10, and that's enough to treat 2 people for COVID, mild to moderate COVID, and that's $30 for those. That's about 1/4 of what
Bongino, yeah.
what Bongino is charging.
So if you buy
this
these,
is-
you'll support our programming, and we're trying to expand our programming.
Yeah,
Pay for.
So you can either
Travis's
get to
pretty
me through
Face for
Twitter.
radio.
Yeah, it's
At AirRescue Doc on
at
Twitter.
AirRescue Doc, or you can send it to 21centuryhc@gmail. And
You wanted them to put something in the subject. What?
Yeah, put the subject as medication.
Okay.
I can ask a quick
Don't
question.
put ivermectin. Put medication.
That may not come to you.
Gmail will go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll be put on a list.
Spam.
So, there's been a lot of talk about it. How do you guys feel, real quickly? I know you're wanting to push along, but real quickly, the fact that maybe population control was sort of part of that. Have you ever heard that?
Which part? Of COVID?
Wanting to treat COVID with ivermectin or treat
yeah.
COVID in general.
Bill Gates has said it
Yeah, Bill
out
Gates
loud.
has, he
Oh, yeah.
said
Multiple
he wants to decrease the number of people on the planet.
He said we have too many people on the planet.
Yeah.
And a good way to control the population is through vaccines.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much was
That's
about
pretty much that's the clip notes.
Short clip.
Yeah.
Well, and the same thing.
Oh, and he's been charged in some other country.
He got charged in the Netherlands. But, that goes back to the original part was to eradicate the Negro race by killing babies and the whole abortion thing.
What's the Tuskegee?
Tuskegee Airmen. That's a different thing. But
what's the
that was
experiment?
syphilis.
Oh, it's a syphilis. There's a syphilis
that
vaccine.
Was syphilis.
So they basically gave him
syphilis vaccine. They simply got these men with syphilis and then didn't treat them to see what happened. And let me tell you, I was in the middle of that in the middle 70s. I had 3 guys who had been in that because I grew up in Alabama, and these guys had been at Tuskegee. But they all died. All 3 of them died. And when I put it on the death certificate that they died from syphilis, the health department, both the local and the state, called me and said, "You can't say that." And I said, "Look, he died from syphilis." Okay, because they didn't want that out there. And it was only about 1980 that they really came out with the fact that the United States Health Service had infected these men with syphilis and not treated them. Because we had decent things to treat syphilis with by the 1970s. Because penicillin was a real good treatment for it. But like I said, I was right in the middle of that crap. And it was terrible, the things that these men with tertiary syphilis had. And but the whole abortion thing was set up to eradicate the Negro race. And the woman who started it actually said that.
Sanger?
Yeah, Sanger, Margaret Sanger.
Yeah.
She actually said that, and there's a picture of her in like 1936 or something saying it's to eradicate them.
Well, so that leads us right, I think, circling back around to wanting everyone to be healthy and this movement for Make America Healthy Again. I think we have a clear choice that if the people who are in power now, the Blob and the apparatus that controls Biden, Kamala, continue to get their way, which is pharma and war, we will get more pharma and war. And one of the hot topics I've been on here, I've been on the journey for such a long time, and I'm so disappointed with myself that I haven't done more in this realm. And like the water department has sparked me again to like really think about what our local resources are doing for us. Water prices are so high where we live. I think we're probably some of the highest anywhere. And our water tastes like chlorine. I'm almost certain there's fluoride and hormones, pharmaceutical products.
Hormones.
So
estrogen.
We're going to listen to Gary Brecka here, but there's a lot of doctors now that are talking about the importance of not drinking tap water. And this just really disgusts me. I'm paying now for private water to come in. That's it's been tested. It doesn't have the impurities in it. It doesn't have pharma products. It doesn't have chlorine. So I'm not saying it's perfect water, but what I'm saying is it doesn't have the things that flow in through the tap. And I want everyone to hear this because I feel like the Make America Healthy Again is going to be, first of all, getting fluoride out of the water. And second of all, the other impurities and toxins that are in our water we can't allow it anymore.
Yeah, if we get the fluoride out, we're going to have a lot more dental problems.
I don't agree with that.
If having a water filtration system is not in the budget, get a Brita water filter that at a minimum gets chlorine and fluoride out of your water. If you have seen the clinical trials, the clinical studies in the last 15 months coming out on fluoride, they are absolutely devastating. They're devastating. Harvard University just launched a study. If you don't believe me, you can go to the National Institute of Health, look up the study yourself. There is 0 levels of safe fluoride. in human beings. It's a neurotoxin. They find that the higher the fluoride concentration in the water, the lower the IQ in every state where they studied this. So stop drinking tap water.
There you go. So you pushed back on this last week, and I saw this, so I brought it back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause you just to say we've been lied to about fluoride. I'm not saying that we need fluoride for the teeth to be good. I'm saying they don't control the amount of fluoride that comes in. Not everybody needs the same amount.
Tried to give me fluoride yesterday, and I turned him down.
Good for you. My kid just had a dental appointment last week, and it was the same deal.
You know, we filter all the water that we use for drinking here. We have better than Brita.
It's like reverse osmosis or something in that category.
Yeah, it is. But
the reality of it is we're paying a lot of money for water to be streamed into our house, and it's not safe. And if we're gonna fix the problem needs to be fixed at the source. And it shouldn't be. Not every person in the community should have to say, "Well, do we want water that's safe for our kids to drink, or are we going to get our own filter?" Well, if they're going to force us to buy filters for our home, that needs to be subsidized. Honestly, should be something that the government helps us pay for.
Or we can, dig a well in our backyard.
Oh, that's ideal.
You can't do that.
No, you can if you live in the county.
If you live in the county, right?
Which is what just happened on property.
Then you're going to have to get one hell of a Culligan system after you do that to treat that water.
What water?
Well water.
Oh, no.
Well water. Oh, I've known a lot of people on well.
Let me tell you, in Montana, when I lived out there, I had well water, and it got contaminated.
Yeah. If you got farms around it,
from farms. So we had to put in
That's the big conversation where you're right at a lot of instances. I wouldn't suggest somebody just go dig a well and drink the water raw. You're right. There's groundwater contamination. They're saying there's E. coli in probably every well, but E. coli is another one of those things that has been around forever. And our bodies had at some point had immunity to it, and then there's spikes in it where it's really bad. But that's a nuanced conversation.
Well, the number one reason why people were denied military service in World War II was because they didn't have enough teeth. And
but drinking fluoride versus using fluoride in a toothpaste, aren't those two different things? Like you just ingesting it versus actually using it on your teeth. Aren't those two different things?
Yes.
Well,
they are.
Well, they're two different things, but they're still fluoride. But
what I'm getting at is how does just drinking fluoride make my teeth healthier?
It doesn't.
It does.
It does.
No, it does.
No, it doesn't. Every piece of information that's out, I've actually looked into this quite a bit. That's anecdotal. What you're saying is what we've been told is water in drinking. It is actually has more detriment than it has help. It is hurting us. It's lowering IQ. It's not worth having good teeth to have your brain rotted and your IQ lowered because this fluoride in the water might make your teeth better. That is just, if you're putting the highest level of health in line, teeth are important.
Dentists are going to start committing suicide if you do that.
There's all kinds of stuff that's coming out now in journals and people that are studying it. And I guarantee you, if RFK gets in and Kelly and Casey Mean gets in, fluoride is going to be under massive attack.
Oh, I don't, I'm not, an advocate for that, but I do know that as a child, I always had fluoridated water because I was on a military base, and I never had a single cavity until I was 21. So, and then there were other people who weren't drinking fluoridated water who lost their teeth when they were little kids.
It sounds very anecdotal, Doc.
Well,
I don't know. I mean, specific instances like that. I mean, were you eating the exact same thing?
Well, people weren't getting cancer and they were drinking the water. Then all of a sudden people are getting cancer and they are drinking the water. So does that mean water's good or does that mean water's bad?
Oh, it's in the air.
It's anecdotal.
It's bad air.
Anyway, I got another clip here. I think it's right on 9.
It's all the chemtrails.
We're gonna get back into a topic that we hit on before, in methylene blue. This is not related to that.
They'll turn your piss green.
PR organization that work with agricultural
Green.
interests to
because of yellow and the
downplay
blue.
the
Yeah.
harms of pesticides in farming and to compile defamatory dossiers on opponents of pesticide use, including food writer Michael Pollan. Just imagine that the USDA spends money to defame people, using your tax dollars, spends money to defame people that are trying to tell you that there's poison in your food.
Yeah.
Measurable amounts, something along the lines of 90+% of Americans have Roundup in their system. They have glyphosate in their system from crops.
That was one of the things I learned too. 5% of the human brain mass and weight is now made of is now plastics. We
What?
learned that in the hearing too.
5%?
Blew my mind. Never heard that statistic.
Oh my
It's
God.
terrifying.
Revealed the U.S. government's funded private social network attacking pesticide critics. So what does it say about this? 2017, two United Nations experts called for a treaty to strictly regulate dangerous pesticides, which they said were a global human rights concern, which, by the way, Roundup is illegal in a lot of countries, citing scientific research showing pesticides can cause cancers, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, and other health problems. Publicly, the pesticide industry's lead trade association dubbed the recommendations unfounded and sensational assertions.
But what's crazy is this is Monsanto, which is also Bayer, and we talked about that. This is the company that knowingly infected people with HIV and shipped it to third world countries because their hemophilia drug had been contaminated, and they knew they'd get busted if they shipped it in the U.S. So they shipped it to third world countries and knowingly infected thousands of people with
Put that
HIV.
back up, Jerry.
And we're trusting these people?
Look what it says here. Publicly, the pesticide industry's lead trade association dubbed the recommendations unfounded and sensational assertions, and private industry advocates have gone further. Derogatory profiles of the two UN experts, Hilal Elver and Baskat Tunsak, are hosted on an online private portal for pesticide company employees and a range of influential allies. Members can access a wide range of personal information about hundreds of individuals from around the world deemed a threat to industry interests, including the U.S. food writers Michael Pollan and Mark Brittman, the Indian environmentalists Vandana Shiva, and the Nigerian activist, you say that one. How do you say that? How do you think you said that name?
Nemo Basi?
Nimamo?
Nemo Basi.
Nimamo Basi. Many profiles include personal details such as the names of family members, phone numbers, home addresses, even house values. The profiling is part of an effort which is financed in part by U.S. taxpayer dollars to downplay pesticide dangers, discredit opponents, and undermine international policymaking, according to court records, emails, and other documents obtained by the nonprofit newsroom Lighthouse Reports.
The point of that clip was pretty obvious. Our media apparatus is basically being funded by people who want to control narratives. And the same organization that has pushed this narrative that fluoride is healthy apparently has no problems with farm chemicals getting into our water, glyphosate, which is massive cancer creator, and all these different hormones and pharmaceutical products not being filtered out of our water. Again, it's anecdotal. You say fluoride good in water, I say fluoride bad in water. I brought I just did a really quick.
Fluoride is good for your teeth. It's not necessarily good for your IQ.
And I mean, I'd say it's good for teeth, but you could take it in doses that are for specific people. Like if you had a test and say what's the optimal amount of fluoride level to make a healthy tooth? I don't know. I'd like to know that.
Brush your teeth
and you could take
that.
it. Well, yeah, there you go. So I did a grok, real quick grok, right? Just took me 30 seconds. I said, how many countries or what countries have outlawed fluoride in the water? Do you have my screen up?
I can. It is up.
So just one real quick search to Grok. It says Israel has significant shift where fluoride was required in water supplies by legislation in 2002. This requirement was repealed in 2014, effectively ending water fluoridation for a period. Although there's no legal whatever that says.
Impediment.
Thank you. Germany does not fluoride its public drinking water, focus instead on other fluoride sources like salt, toothpaste, and tablets for children and adolescents. So there's a slightly different nuanced way to do it. Western European nations have ceased fluoridating water. This includes countries like France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, Sweden, Holland, Denmark, Austria, and Belgium, which either never adopted water fluoridation or have stopped the practice. And it goes on. And so, again,
why aren't they all, nuts? Why aren't they? If fluoride reduces IQ, why aren't they all idiots and locked up in places?
If you have a lower IQ, you get locked up.
I don't understand what's the question.
If you have a low IQ and you can't even take care of yourself, that's why the Germans are so crazy. Of course, they drink a lot of. I'm beaten up on the German people.
We lost our Germans.
Yeah,
well, I'm a German, so I don't understand how that's going to work.
But when you are in the Germans, they treat you poorly.
Oh, that's funny. Oh man.
But I'm okay with not putting fluoride in the water, and that's fine when everybody's walking around with no teeth. The dentists will love it because
I think toothpaste. Like, why couldn't you just have it in the toothpaste though, and not have to drink it?
Well, you can.
Well, there you go. My teeth are still there, and I'm not drinking fluoride.
Yeah.
Feel free to riff a minute here. I've lost I lost my clips here. I'm trying to find.
You lost your brain, huh?
No,
too much fluoride.
I think Apple might have removed my.
Yeah, that's a problem with having an Apple device is that they'll come after you.
Hey, an apple a day, man. An apple a day keeps it.
Man.
I found
Get the doctor.
Samsung till I die.
There's so much wrong with that statement, but I'm gonna go away from that.
Hey, let me tell you, when I take pictures with my Samsung, people say that's the best picture I've ever seen. Can't get that on my
Amazon or the other devices that are non-Apple.
Yeah,
it's the best. It's the best picture they've ever seen, just because it was your smiling face in the picture.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
It was because he went to a school for the blind.
I took a picture of a lady who's a well-known actress, and she said, "Oh my God, that's the greatest picture. I can't get that on my Apple." And I said, "That's because you don't have a Samsung."
Because you're supposed to eat an apple. You're not supposed to get it on your
She's flirting
apple.
with you, Dr. Roy.
No, she's not.
Oh, okay. I think she is. So I came across this latest clip.
Joy Kong.
There's several different clips here that I'm going to share to end, and we're circling back around to a topic I don't feel like we stayed on it nearly as long as we should have, and we should have kept coming back to it like we have ivermectin until I'm proven wrong, or until this massive amount of people that are now I'm hearing these things that sound very anecdotal, but coming from very reputable people. So this clip here is something that you when we started talking about methylene blue, you have a lot of knowledge about it. You knew historically where it came from and what it was used for. I'm just going to summarize it here real quick with this short clip, and then move into one more clip.
I guess the first medical use was when they realized there were anti-malaria properties of this substance, right? This dye.
Right. They knew back in World War I they were using it for the soldiers, not only for malaria, but also for UTIs and prostatitis and infections, any type of infections. They knew it was a good antimicrobial. Before that time, it was used as a dye for dyeing your Levi's, and the dyeing is a synthetic dye. But they started using it in the soldiers, and eventually they found out that they didn't like peeing blue all the time, so they purified it. And eventually the last purification of methylene blue is hydroxychloroquine, that we, again, used a little bit for COVID. We used it for rheumatoid arthritis. We used it for malaria. And so, and it just went out of favor for a while because they started making drugs from the big pharma, and the methylene blue as a dye just sort of faded away until we started bringing it back out again.
Mm-hmm. And I understand all the hospitals have to have methylene blue on hand, correct?
That's what I've heard, yeah.
And it's important for fighting carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah, that's what they do. That's the big thing for people who get the, carbon monoxide poisoning. That's the other big thing they use in the hospitals for, is to help get that, carbon monoxide out of the mitochondria and putting good oxygen into the cells. And so nowadays, that's the main purpose, as well as using it for an agent to track perforations in the bowels or to follow other things. But the carbon monoxide poisoning is the big thing it's being used in hospitals for.
Yeah. So.
All right, that's the end of that one there, and I got.
Yeah, the whole thing about carbon monoxide is we don't see near as much of that in the U.S. as we used to, because people are not, sleeping with charcoal in their bedroom, and I've seen a lot of people with carbon monoxide poisoning, being a pulmonologist, because they bring them in from having gotten them from their heater or that's something, and you have to treat them. And it's sometimes you can bring them back, and sometimes you can't. But yeah, we use methylene blue for that. And the time I used methylene blue was we were having a party at the fraternity house, and we were making up a big vat of alcohol, and I put methylene blue in it, and all of a sudden everybody was peeing green, and I said, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" And I just laughed, But yeah, it'll make your urine green.
Okay, so there's another clip here that I'm going to lead into. This particular podcast, to me, is one of those that it made methylene blue sound a little too good to be true. And let me lead that off by saying this guy in this interview has worked with the CIA, has worked with the government, and is basically a professional neurologist. He's a neurologist who has specific understanding of how people are brainwashed and how to help brainwash people. And so that's kind of his action in the government. So basically a narrative creator and or a mind bender, as it were. This whole podcast I would highly recommend. I don't have the name of it just offhand, but the link will be in the show notes. I recommend this whole conversation. It was very, very fascinating. Part of the things I was looking at, Dr. Roy, was, leading into this plan to kind of truth seek and all that, is figure out where we're lied to, figure out how the narratives are created, and create better narratives. But the end of the day here, he's talking about methylene blue and what he has discovered, and he talks about several other doctors, published studies, and I just want everybody to hear this. I feel it's very, very needed. Let me make sure my volume's up, which it wasn't.
Most common side effect. And I said that this is so dumb. There has to be something that's going to stop my seizures. That's not going to kill me at the
terrible.
same time.
Why does medication like that exist? Like antidepressant side effects, suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, I think in Western medicine, medication is not designed to cure. It's designed to treat a individual symptom. And doctors get training on treating symptoms instead of people. I'm going to just take this, like this chemical's too high, I'm going to give you a pill that's going to make that chemical too low. But then it might make this other chemical too high, so you're going to see this other doctor who's a specialist in that chemical. He's going to give you another pill to push that chemical down where it's supposed to be.
And that one doctor has an affiliate link for the other doctor.
Yeah. And none of the doctors have any malice. It's just the way the system works right now. And it works okay, but we need to start seeing humans instead of symptoms. So I discovered this miracle that saved my entire life. And now I drive a car. I have 0 seizures. My most recent brain scan says that everything is reversed. The damage has been reversed because of what I found. And it was a miracle.
What is
I'm just going to leave you hanging on.
What is it? All right, this is the show. Thank you very much.
Like and subscribe.
What did you find? I mean, I know I mean, you've been talking to me about it, and it seems too good to be true.
Big time. Which what I thought for a long time.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm trained in medical neuroscience. I'm trained in all this stuff. I would totally know if this was a thing, I would know about it.
Yeah.
My ego was so huge. And I was browsing Instagram shorts. What?
I'm not an expert here, but you're not just some dude who found something. Like there's papers on it, there's studies on it.
I've published medical papers on it.
You've published medical papers on it?
Yes.
So before we get into any of that, let's establish that, and then
and let's just say I'm not an expert either, but I have published academic papers on this. So I'm scrolling YouTube Shorts or Instagram one day, and all of my feed is recommending brain stuff because I'm obsessed. I'm absolutely obsessed. And at this point, I'm finishing up my training in neuroradiology, like reading brain scans and stuff like that at Duke University. So I'm obsessing over the brain because I'm studying it. I'm obsessing over the brain because I'm desperate to fix my own brain at the same time. And I scroll up, and this guy sounds like a Huntington Beach bum, like a surfer dude. And he's talking about this chemical. He says it's a miracle cure. And ego came up again. And I said, well, he doesn't sound like my professor. So I swiped up. But right when I swiped up, my brain processed what he was saying. He was talking about this magical chemical in our bodies called cytochrome C oxidase and monoamine oxidase. And I was processing these, and I tried to swipe back down to find him to listen to what he said, and I hit the home button on accident. So like when you're in the middle of a scroll, you can't go back.
Oh.
So
wow, that's fascinating that it was that split second and you could have missed it.
Yeah.
What happened?
It's
you
coming.
looked it up?
So it took 2 or 3 days because I typed in surfer dude doctor cytochrome oxidase. I tried everything I could think of to try to find him. So his name is Dr. John Laurence. He is a functional neurologist. He's a doctor. He has a practice in Sarasota, Florida, but he was talking about this chemical called methylene blue. And he said it's an industrial blue dye. And I'm like, okay, yeah.
Sounds legit.
Yeah. What is that going to do? And at the time, I thought a doctor would know, a neurologist would have told me, this would be famous, everybody would know about it if it was effective.
It would have been on my uncle's podcast.
Guaranteed.
His uncle's Andrew Huberman.
Yeah, it would have been on your uncle's podcast, Uncle Huberman. So who's a real neuroscientist, by the way. I consider myself a lowercase n neuroscientist. Mm-hmm. He's an uppercase guy.
Yeah.
So I hear about this chemical, and it's the most effective thing I've ever taken in my life for my skin, my eyes, my lungs, my heart, my brain. Every single cell in my body is benefiting from methylene blue. And the first time a human being ever uttered the words magic bullet was in like 1897. This doctor who discovered methylene blue discovered that it basically cures just about everything.
All right, this is a huge clip, and I'm going to let you go right on top of that, Dr. Roy.
Yeah.
You and I talked about it for a minute, several podcasts back. I don't even know if you were here when we talked about methylene blue last. And I think there were some really good points. There were some really good clips. Here's what I think Make America Healthy Again is going to either rise, lift people to the top that are talking about this and actually putting a bunch of anecdotal evidence together to give people hope and a vision for something that could be different, or we're going to rely on pharma to shoot down methylene blue, much like ivermectin is something pharma can't make any money off of. The patent's been dropped on methylene blue, so you can get it cheap. Now,
yeah, you can get a pound of methylene blue for a couple of bucks.
With that said, they say it in here, don't go out and just buy any methylene blue. I think there is a difference in quality. Some of it's used to clean fish tanks, right?
Yeah.
So let's not run out and buy it, but there are doctors, neuroscientists, and teams coming together to talk about this thing. You and I talk about preventing brain deterioration, preventing Alzheimer's, presenting on this guy had a seizure disorder, and he's a neuroscientist, had a seizure disorder that no one could figure out. And he just so happened across this product, started taking it. And again, this whole podcast it's one of those that it gives me goosebumps to all the little conversations. It's a little drag, they drug it out kind of like I'm dragging this out right now. But what are your thoughts on that? I want to continue this methylene blue conversation throughout time because I'm looking out for my parents. I know we've talked about Alpha Brain, which is Joe Rogan's product. I don't know if there's a replacement for that or something far better, but I'm going to send this link to you, Dr. Roy. I want you to listen to as much of it as you can and then come back next week to talk about it again. But anything you want to say about methylene blue, just go right in on it.
Well, there are some genetic problems in certain people that they do not have enough methylation in certain parts of their body, and methylene blue will help that. And when I say methyl, that's basically a carbon atom attached to some hydrogen atoms. And so you talk about methyl alcohol. That is an alcohol that has one carbon atom and several hydrogen atoms and one oxygen attached to it. So if you've got that genetic problem with methylene blue, and you can measure that it occurs in about 30 or 40% of the population, and you can get a test on that. You will probably be better served by taking methylene blue.
Well, there are practices in doctors now, and I wanted to bring methylene blue up first and foremost because similar to ivermectin, I feel like if you and I can research it and really find out, hey, there's something to be said here, maybe we could offer methylene blue as well. But let's table that. For me, it's about let's get to what's true and what we think can help the most people. The truth-seeking piece of this to me is I've now created a truth-seeking apparatus within Twitter and Grok, and I'm adding different doctors and people that are talking about methylene blue and ivermectin into these channels, and I'm trying to collect information and ask questions to Grok based on what these people are saying, because I want to know if methylene blue is legit or not. I want to know what it is, what it can actually do with what, because if it could help you, and you're going to be here for another 15 years and we're doing this podcast and your brain's functioning top end, give it to my dad who's concerned about his aunts, his brothers and sisters who've died and are suffering from Alzheimer's. This is very I'm passionate about it, but I'm not just want go sell something. That's not about that. We got to get to know if it actually can have some benefit.
Well,
that's what I want to do.
Clearly methylene blue has been used in medicine for decades.
And no real harm or side effects, right? If taken in moderation.
Makes your pee green is all. And
as opposed to slightly yellowish.
Yeah.
The blue and yellow make green.
Blue and yellow makes
green. Well, that makes
green.
good sense.
Yeah, that's what it is. But we used to use it as an antimicrobial in my early medical career back in the 70s, and it was reasonably good at that time. And then there have been some discoveries about the use of methylene blue to help the people that have the MLRK mutation, and that can really help some of these folks to methylate. Use methylation with their folic acid. So anyway, I'm not against using that, and clearly it in refinement it could be very good, like hydroxychloroquine. And I've got some hydroxychloroquine in my medicine cabinet. I've used that for treating COVID as well.
Yeah, there's an IMATH protocol that I think was it Corey or who's the other one was very high on the IMath protocol. Anyway,
McCullough.
Yeah, Peter McCullough. Yeah, so he's that, along with zinc and some other stuff, was a treatment protocol, both for preventative at some point, but obviously post symptom, and then for long COVID, they have different recommendations for that.
Yeah.
Can I chime in about that video real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Just about something else. It's not about the medication or the drug you're talking about. It's about something else that he said that actually hits home for me. And I've talked about it before, but he talked about doctors not being malicious, but treating the symptom instead of treating the person.
Sure.
And I saw that firsthand. I've talked about my grandmother who. She had many different symptoms treated in different ways, and we thought she had Alzheimer's. Like she was getting tested for Alzheimer's. She was not. My grandmother, her mind had kind of gone away. She wasn't the same person, saying the same thing multiple times, like the same. She could tell you a story, like a very short story, and then you say, "Well, it was good to see you," and then she said, "Oh, did I tell you about?" and say the exact same story, like
right.
That kind of thing. And when a doctor finally took the time to treat her and not symptoms, they found out that due to a amalgamation of all of the medication she was on, she was getting overdosed with potassium.
Yeah.
And when they figured that out and they got her straightened out, she came back. Like anyway, I just with him hitting that and the kind of maybe the overall overhaul of the medical community or the Make America Healthier again or whatever might happen, but treating the person as a whole versus just a specific symptom, or having taken this medicine to fix this, but having to take this medicine to take care of the side effect or whatever it might be. And you get too many of those in one person, and it becomes, like I said, an amalgamation of we thought she had Alzheimer's, and it was just she was overdosing on potassium.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to go with the individual treatment, and some of that is these specialist type of organizations that are popping up. Optimize You is a kind of a local one here, and they do a much wider blood they look at your blood in a much more detailed way than most standard tests, and a lot of people are doing that. And I guess I only say that to say we definitely need more individualized. But I think the Make America Healthy again thing is root cause fixing of things, like water should be pure.
Sure.
Shouldn't be drinking things that turn frogs gay in the you just shouldn't.
Sure.
Because not that gay people are bad. We so many great gay friends. Like me and my wife are like huge. We love gay people, but we don't need chemicals that are altering our pathways and what direction that we're heading. And the same way with food. We don't need stuff that's in the food that's poisoning us. And I want to kind of summarize and finish out here with our last little clip. And I think Trump got elected in 2016. For me, largely, I was at that point, I was most excited about him because he was calling out the media. All the different things that he said about the media and corruption and all that. And, it caused them to all go into a panic. And basically, they spent the last 8 years trying to destroy him and seemingly only making him stronger. I want to point to this last clip is in I'm Ready to Finish the Job, Dr. Roy. Me and you are on this new media platform. We're here talking about things that our media would never talk about, all the way to local water departments and all this stuff. I mean, local media has no interest in that. I don't know why. But I think Trump's final job, if he can only do one more, I want him to make America healthy again, or let Elon and Dr. Casey and Callie and RFK and do all that stuff. That'd be great. But if he could put the final nail in the coffin of our mainstream media and to somehow break up the monopoly that, these ABC, NBC, CBS, all these people are basically they've been handed a certification or an allotment to be on free media, right? Yeah. These companies are basically propaganda narrative spewers, and they're not telling us the truth. Like, we need these people out, and we need people that are held accountable to truth-seeking back in. And I'm just going to finish with this clip. Y'all can riff on it if you want. Otherwise, we're going to probably go have some lunch.
Yep.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
Those statements had been made less than 4 months before the presidential debate on June 27th, which showed to the world just how much Biden had been in mental decline.
Making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
And it wasn't just Joe Scarborough that lied about Biden's condition.
Is he up for a second term?
Oh, Chuck, 100%. Incredibly sharp, incredibly probing.
President Biden, who I've been around numerous times just in this last year, is sharp, he's focused, he's bright.
This is a man who is sharp, who is on top of his game, who knows what's going on.
He's pretty sharp. And he's got a very good grasp of the issues.
It's not a coincidence that all these supposedly independent media outlets all described Biden as sharp. It's obvious that they were all fed the same talking points. If you had followed certain independent media outlets, you would have known that Biden had been in noticeable mental decline for years. But the corporate media brushed those off as right-wing conspiracies. Speaking of talking points, here were some headlines after Kamala Harris went on a Fox News interview. The Guardian, Kamala Harris pledges break from Biden presidency in testy Fox News interview. NPR, Harris interview on Fox gets testy. CNN, Kamala Harris spars with Fox News anchor in testy interview. Again, they were all fed the same talking points.
AP News.
He actually has been president, and the disaster that you tell me would befall us were he to be reelected didn't occur. The other thing is, half the country supports him. Why do you think that is? That's an indication of, A, his acceptability to a good deal of our compatriots, but B, of the weakness of the other side. I'm not supposed to notice that? So to think that you can disqualify him with a characterological argument, oh, he's nuts, oh, he's crazy, oh, he's venal, oh, he's a bad man, oh, he's stupid, oh, he's a fraud, oh, he's a whatever. Those are Democratic Party talking points. They don't address where the union vote is going. They don't address where the working class vote. Why is it that non-college educated whites are supporting him in such numbers? They don't address why blacks, including black men, but not limited to them, are showing a good deal more favor to Trump in 2024 than they did in 2020, than they did in 2016. And what's going on in the country. Trump is a legitimate voice of an extremely important element of American political life. And I think that just has to be taken on board. The world will come to an end if Trump wins the election. I don't think so.
None of this is to say that Trump doesn't have flaws. And we'll get into some of those later. But
I'll share this clip and all the clips that I've shared today in the show notes. I feel like when I come across these conversations and you hear people put clips together, and I get tired of listening to the media all saying the same thing and repeating there's the same ideas in their own voice. I would rather give highlight to people that are coming up with these concepts and splicing these videos together and sharing love and getting links out on them, because I want people like this who are independent, who truth seek, who are held accountable, who, if they just blatantly lie, we have the ability to turn the off switch on or put the filter on them to where we don't hear as much of it. Like when we're trying to grow a truth-seeking apparatus, whether it's Grok and Twitter or some other that we end up with later down the road with AI, we have to have the ability as humans, as me and you sitting across the table, saying, well, that's a lie. And I want to put a vote on that or a down. This person needs to be removed, not because I want censorship, because I don't want it clouding my decision making moving forward. I don't want a lie to, what is it? A lie said enough becomes partial truth. I don't know what it is.
That's
there's some there. I don't know if
that was
Orwell.
No, it was in Nazi Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth.
Yeah. So I don't know if you all have anything to add on that. I just want to implore people to get out and vote. Go vote.
Yeah.
And
do it.
Vote for healthier America. Vote for less lies. And yeah, Trump has lied. Trump is blovious. If we were in a different time, I would say we have an option. I now agree with RFK, and
we have no option.
We really don't have an option. We have an upward track or we have a downward track, and we are to the point of down where I feel like we might not get back and we might lose our free speech if we don't make this choice. So
could lose everything.
Yeah. We could. Gentlemen, I appreciate you.
Yep.
I hope Tuesday goes well for America.
Well, I'm not so worried about Tuesday as I am the afterwards.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's going to be a
fight all the way.
Yeah, either way
until January.
There's going to be a fight all the way in either way, no matter of outcome. I think.
Yep, agreed.
So that's probably going to fill us up for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
we'll be talking about kind of the aftermath of whatever the outcome is. I'm looking forward to it and I'm excited, but there's going to be a big, I think you and the three of us will have to sit down maybe after the election and talk about a path of whichever way it goes. Because if Trump comes in and he brings this team and he mixes things up, there's going to be a lot of things. We got to hold people accountable still. My whole thing with giving a truth-seeking apparatus to even with someone like Elon, who I might trust more than some, but not fully trust, is any system can be corrupted.
Sure.
And so we have to keep fighting lies no matter what side. And
obviously Elon is not corruptible with money, because he's got more money than anybody else in the world.
Oh, I love the advertisers. They don't advertise. Don't. Have you seen that video?
I say go flog yourself, but he used the other F word.
Yeah, go. Yeah, just don't. I don't care.
And
don't blackmail me with.
Was it Don Lemon or some other guy that was? And he's like, "What? You don't care about what your shareholders say or whatever?" No.
Yeah.
Well, there aren't that many shareholders.
No,
because
it's advertisers and stuff he was talking about.
Yeah, he holds all the stuff to Twitter and about 75% of Tesla, and they're not even selling SpaceLink yet.
Starlink.
Yeah,
they're selling it. You can get it. You can get it on your. You can get it on your house if you want.
Oh, stock. I mean stock.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I want them to sell stock.
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about that. I just don't. I don't care.
Stop advertising. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, guys, let's go have some good food and get outside and
get some vitamin D.
Where are we going so I can call Carlos the international terrorist to join us?
Oh my!
We might have to get Dr. Lackey on here if we could. If we could not get him in trouble in his current path and career, we should have him on and have a conversation with him. I don't know, but we'll figure it out as soon as we drop the mic here. But
okay,
everyone, thanks.
Go vote.
Yep. Go vote.
Thanks, Travis. Thanks, Roy.
See you.
Take care, guys.
See you next time.
Bye.